kind of production do you think we're doing here? You gotta change the stream title, sir. Goodness. I believe you're muted, bub. Matt.
What's too powerful for our ears?
The best production we've ever had. We get better at this every time.
Well, you know. Let me see if I can get my head squared up in the middle of my square.
I know. I'm trying to make sure that I don't.
Like trying to figure out which way to go. Go back. Go. Do I go left? Do I go right?
I don't know. This is the very definition of like we are literally just talking heads.
It's okay.
It ain't bad. It ain't bad. Good old Matt here seems to have truly only the best stream.
How was your day?
My day's pretty good.
That's good.
I think you swung in near the tail end, but I showed The Hobbit to a couple friends on Discord today. That's about what my day is pertained to, other than work.
No work here. We still have the snow on the ground.
Matt is still muted.
Still
no matter
muted,
what
buddy.
he does.
Oh, okay. You know what? I had to get it fixed.
Okay,
All
you're
right,
back now. This is good.
Okay.
We're all good.
So yeah.
Now we can get in earnest.
Good evening, guys. Welcome to a special stream tonight here. You guys saw a couple that I've done that Aiden and I have actually done before. That we've used to call the DM's Roundtable. Well, I'm trying to workshop the name a little bit. So my new name for it, since our current stream name is Friday Night Dice, a play on the football movie for Friday Night Lights. We went with the DM's halftime report for today. We'll see how the name turns out. You guys let us know what you think. If you absolutely hate it, then you know what, maybe I'll change it again. Who knows?
I hate it.
But anyways, guys,
That's two football jokes.
you guys will notice you'll notice a familiar face here with me tonight. My co-host for this and probably the foreseeable future, as long as he decides to, not leave me. Aiden, or as you guys better know him as Kelrick from our stream game. And then with us tonight, you guys will see a familiar face who is from one of my other campaigns, one of which I don't stream. I wish I did, but not everyone there plays with cameras, so it would be kind of awkward if you guys only saw like two faces the whole night. And I don't know how they'd feel about it either, because I haven't even talked to them about it. But anyways,
but my face is pretty good, so that's
hey,
enough.
that's true.
Hey,
that's true.
Your face is pretty good. I got a face for radio. That's all I'm gonna say.
So Avery, if you'd like, you can go ahead and introduce yourself for tonight's stream.
Well, like you said, I play D&D with Matt. I play Tybix, Twilight Cleric, in his campaign with a couple personal friends of mine, and then some friends from the internet. And yeah, I DM. I've played D&D and DM'd for 3.5-4 years now, and I can never get enough of it.
That is quite the resume.
I suppose. A lot of really rough years. Like the first 3.25 years were just me with paper clips on a table, and then the last couple of months have gotten a lot better.
I remember I ran D&D once with I don't even want to call them marbles. They're like those flat-bottomed but like round top things. And I was just like, here's all your enemies, and I just put them out there, and I was like, you guys are these ones. They're the same color, but here you go.
It really puts the pressure on you to describe it very well when you've got just like a pink paper clip and a blue paper clip, and then like a scribbled Sharpie piece of paper.
Yeah. Sorry for interrupting your intro, Matt.
Hey. So yeah, anyways, Aiden, you want to give a little blip about yourself, although most people here probably already know you.
Yeah, you guys probably know me. I play Mesos and Kelrick Elsine Lyris in the 2 games that we stream here. I'm also a DM myself, and I play in a couple other D&D games. I think much like Hex here just said, or Avery, whatever we want to call ourselves here.
Whatever.
I can't get enough either, and I don't know what the hell's wrong with me. I run a game 100% remote from my friends that is spread out across the United States. But I run a game that I didn't want to sacrifice battle maps or anything else for. I still wanted to run D&D with minis and everything. You see a lot of those elements in the way that we set up Friday Night Dice, as well as the way that we've now done Friday Night Dice remote. Yeah, that's about it. I'm also the behind-the-scenes technical guy on Friday Night Dice sometimes when things need changing.
That is very true. So yeah, guys, just a
I
little.
took a lot of what I learned from my campaign when we were standing up Friday Night Dice, and
Yeah.
I think that really helped us out.
Yep.
You should have been there for Matt tonight to get his sound issues fixed.
You know, you would think so.
Oh man.
Unfortunately, there's this thing sweeping around the nation killing people, so
That's
Oh.
true. Shit.
But
it is what it is.
anyways, guys, so for tonight's session, our topic for tonight's session is going to be session prep and tips and tricks to kind of help you guys along, and kind of some of the things that we do when we're prepping for our sessions as DMs, and maybe you guys can take some of our ideas and twist them to work better for yourselves and work in your own home games, and maybe even in your own
No, I'm here
online
for your
games.
ideas. I'm here to steal from you guys.
Yeah, I know. I made a few notes here. I've got some bullet points here that I think are pretty solid. So we'll see what comes of it. Although my iPad here, which I'm using for chat tonight because I didn't want to sit at my computer and I wanted to sit in my normal seat, it doesn't seem like it wants to work. So this is also one of the few times, guys, you actually get to have some face-to-face interactions with us where we can actually respond to you while you're chatting because we're not concentrating on playing D&D. So these kind of community nights that I like to do, which I'm wanting to get back to doing, are some things that I look forward to doing because I get to actually talk to some of you guys and interact with you and not just feel like I'm ignoring you all night and then messaging you guys during the break like, hey, thanks for being here. But really, thanks for being here.
Yeah, if you've got any questions, throw them our way. I mean,
yeah, I mean, we'll do our best.
We don't proclaim to be the most experienced DMs on the planet, but I think between the three of us, we shake out to what I would consider a decent level of experience. Certainly not. I'm not running games professionally and selling my time as a DM like some
You're
DMs
not? I
actually
am.
do. I wish. Those guys and gals who are 100% DMs, full-time DMs, or
Oh, I know.
something else.
That shit's crazy.
That'd be the dream.
Oh, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I
dream.
mean, yeah, it would be. It'd be a lot of work too.
Sure.
Oh man.
Matt, did you say people watch this, or there's people watching this right now?
Yes.
Nobody watches this.
But it sounded wrong the first time, didn't it?
Oh. So yeah, guys, thanks for being here. Let's go ahead and jump into tonight's session. So, I guess I'll go first with one of the things that when it comes down to, and this is more along the lines of it plays into session prep, but it plays along the lines more of world prep. I really like to, personally as a DM, I really like to front load a lot of my work for my session preps into my world prep. So I'll throw out certain plot hooks or certain things that could potentially happen within cities and like rumors people might hear in taverns, like just things that are very general, or if I know I'm playing with a specific party, things that could be twisted to fit towards maybe someone's story or something along those lines. So I like to kind of throw a lot of that work into my session prep, into my world prep ahead of time. So when it comes to session prep, I feel like I can like pull up that list of those things that I have. Like, for instance, you guys are in Baldwin Port. I was like, okay, I have all these rumors, all these side quests, all these NPCs. I was like, which of this stuff can be twisted or conveyed into someone else's story or into the current plot that I've already prepped and worked on, so that I don't have to go back and prep that again.
That sounds pretty similar to the way I start some of these things. It seems like you start doing it and then you'll get on a roll. You'll start, you start with the big picture and you get on a roll, and before you realize it, you've got, a 1,000-page Google document with every possible
Right.
plot and subplot that could exist. And I think that's the best part of the preparation part, is every single little, dumb idea you have gets to go down on paper.
Yep.
And even if it doesn't ever end up seeing the light of day, like you mentioned, these things can all twist and intertwine later. So the more work you do for yourself up front,
Yeah.
it benefits you.
And those things that you create and you use, like if they don't work in one town, maybe they work in another town, and like you're like they get to a town and you're like, hey, I have something that I prepped in Baldwin Port, but now they're in Cool Axum, and pick plot players are never going to know the difference. And
Yep,
I
players
mean,
don't know if you're
yeah,
moving things behind the scenes.
exactly. And it might just fit better for that scenario at that given point in the timeline of where your players are of what you're trying to accomplish.
I think there's
Absolutely.
always the way that I always start my session prep, because I try to run a concentrated story that has personal vested interests by a character or a couple characters within my party. I try to always make the story personal. Otherwise, why would you not give up adventuring like the next minute? Because you're fighting for your life every day, sometimes multiple times a day. Like you would give up adventuring so fast.
Yeah, for sure.
Like any logical, no sane person is an adventurer, but the only people who like risk their lives like that on a daily basis are people with vested interests. That's all across film and books and everything else. It always becomes a personal story. But I always start with my session recap, primarily, and I find that lets me get into the cadence of like, this is where the story was going, and if I have something that was last session that was dropped or something like that, or they're on a kind of a preset path, like in a dungeon or something, it's pretty easy to session prep. I mean, I'm looking for at a couple encounters and leading my party along to the next plot point. If it's not, I can definitely agree with you guys, and I know I've mentioned this before in other DM roundtables or DM halftime reports, whatever we're taking to calling them.
That's okay.
I have a Google Doc that sits as a shortcut on the home screen of my phone, on the home screen of my tablet, and on my desktop. And anytime I have an idea, I get it down on paper as fast as I can, because if you don't, you're gonna lose the idea.
Yep.
Yeah. I've lost so many ideas by not writing them down, and the idea of how the thought of how many ideas I have thought of at 2 a.m. and then let go by the wayside bothers the hell out of me. It will always bother the hell out of me.
I can relate
The,
there. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say the way get an audio recorder on your phone. I have an audio to
It's not bad.
text transcriber on my phone. It's an app I downloaded. It's free, and it works okay. It gets most of the words right. So if I'm on a car ride or if I'm in bed or wherever the case may be, and this goes for everything, every idea, it will save your life. Get one of those and you just say, hey, blah, 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 and then it's there. You save it for there.
Yeah. The only thing I can definitely say is for those times when I don't have, because like I said, I try to run a linear storyline. For those times when I don't have a preset idea of where things are going, I also keep a list of, like, I call it monster ideas, and I think I've talked about this before, but I'm going to go into it again. Basically, I've just got like all these cool monsters that, like, I'm like, that'd be fun to run, and I'm able to just easily scroll through, and if I don't have an idea, maybe one of those monsters will give me an idea. Like, you know, I don't know, there's a dragon here, you know, or there's a bunch of hill giants that are going to ambush you. And, like, worst comes to worst, I'm sure some of us DMs, depending on how long we've been running, have all had those throwaway sessions where we're like, well, I gotta run D&D, didn't have time to prep, let me just throw a bunch of monsters at him for hopefully 4 hours worth and then close the session. Sometimes it gets like that.
Absolutely.
Either that or you just throw your improv skills through a loop and you're like, all right, we're putting it to the test tonight.
I'm out of it.
Yeah, that's the other version of session prep is no session prep, and I am not that kind of DM.
Oh.
Props to people who are. I have played at tables where it was 100% based on what I have come to see as a player, and obviously I don't always know the truth. I'm pretty sure it was almost 99.9% improv and big figures in the world. And it was he was constantly rolling on random encounter tables and trying to find a monster of a certain CR that matched it. Campaign went well. Players enjoyed themselves. I can't do that. Oh God, no.
He saved on session prep. It was very economical.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Yep,
yeah.
Very economical.
I mean, and that works for some people. I mean, there's not to
our table
dog
had a
on
ton
it.
of fun.
Yeah, no.
Our table had a ton of fun, so I am
Definitely.
not dogging on it.
Yeah,
at
definitely.
all.
So when do you guys want to take the next topic?
Ooh.
I got something.
Okay.
So, well, I guess I'll go into how I develop a character.
Sure.
And I'll ask you guys how you guys develop your characters. Is that kind of how this works?
Yeah, sure. Like basically, you know, just
Like an NPC or a
yeah,
character?
NPC.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or involved in characters as well, I suppose. Because the first step, like we're talking about broad strokes, right? You always start with the broad strokes. And my first step, whenever I'm running out of ideas, is I write 5 phrases down. I just call them quest names in my head, right? And these are my ideas for potential plot hooks, right? And then just after that, I write down a couple of names of people that might might be involved. Maybe they're people that are vaguely involved that they know already, or maybe there's somebody that they're going to meet as part of this. And then once I get a little closer in, and I've got all these random hooks that are floating around, I'll pick a hook that seems appropriate, and I'll pick these characters. And when the time comes to flesh out these characters, I just the first thing I do is figure out what they want. That's the most important thing I want to know about, as a DM, is what they want. I don't want to know necessarily exactly what they'd say in every situation. I don't really want to know how they'd act in every situation. I want to know what they want. And then sort of that innate understanding of psychology you have guides their actions.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
hard if you over prepare, especially with a character, the characters can become almost like puppets,
One-dimensional. Yeah.
one dimensional, right?
Yep.
You give them their core philosophy, and then a basic description. She wears a green cloak, she's got brown hair, she's got vines on her arms, and she hates drow, and she wants all drow dead. And then
Hey.
you can work. That's a very basic description, but you can work backwards from there. Someone
Right.
who has that kind of hatred is going to be a probably pretty terse person.
Right.
She's probably going to be short and brief with you, and so that's where I start. And I talk a ton about, or I try to be as economical as possible in my prep because I have so little time. And so with that alone, I can make a decent character. Everything else is just responding in the moment. I don't have to prepare too much more than that, except for having a general voice ready. And then when they come to that person, I just respond to what they say.
Yeah.
And that's it. Unless you.
That's a really good point, and it makes me think of something. You say how you give like a general description and just like one of their core values. It makes me think of and this happened actually on Friday Night Dice. I have a blacksmith in Baldenport. I literally have in his text block. I'm like, here's a short brief of his history that has nothing to do with my players, so there's no reason for me to bring it up. And then he hates the fox people, and he's just a very brunt and brute dwarf. That's all I put in there, and just like
Perfect character for Shelby to react to.
exactly. And that's one of those things. Is like whenever speaking about creating or NPCs, or like picking out the NPCs that I have prepped for sessions, is like how can I have this NPC ready to either trigger or engage one of my characters?
Mm-hmm. That's
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, just to touch on like what you said, I think that's very good. I like to think of my NPCs, especially if I'm low on options or low on ideas, and I'll give an example for a situation that I ran. But I think of my NPCs as the haves and the have-nots. Either the NPC needs something from the players, or the players are going to find themselves needing something from the NPC, whether it be information. I'm not talking about like shopkeepers, but like information, tools that are not commonly found, like not in a shop necessarily, but like some sort of plot tool. Those are the haves, and those are usually very easy kind of characters to write, from the sense of you've got to introduce them in such a way so the players immediately, and it's more the psychology thing that we were talking about, immediately understand they can trust this NPC. And this NPC isn't going to lead him astray. This NPC is not bait. This NPC is not going to turn into the bad guy at the end. This NPC is the tool that you can use to solve problems that you can't solve using the numbers on your character sheet. So I think that's usually what I do. And the example that I have is my players were going through basically getting out of the tutorial area in my world. I had a section of my world geographically closed off that I wanted to run a couple sessions in, get a feel for what the party wants, not develop the world too much externally, but hint at things, and then take them through this basically above ground dungeon for a couple sessions while I develop the rest of the world that caters to what they per se need. And while they were going through this above ground dungeon, which was basically a huge swamp, and they had a couple options to leave, they didn't have to go through the swamp. I introduced an NPC that was basically a guide and gave them the tools they needed to make the swamp a little bit more bearable. Because at the outset, when they first ascended, I made it pretty clear to them overall that, like, this is impassable territory. You guys are in real danger. And then they tried to strike out on their own and ended up realizing, no, we really need that guide. And like
Sure.
that's also me reinforcing the continual idea that I can bring back in guiding characters that keep them along this personal journey that they're on.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Yeah,
when you
definitely.
spoke about like drumming up an NPC, that immediately spoke to me. It was like I always think of my NPCs as either the haves or have-nots. Either they want
This
something from the player, or they're able to give the players something that they don't have.
That's a
and that
really
le-
good way to look at it too. Go ahead.
Absolutely. I hadn't really ever considered it like that. But I'm curious your thoughts on sort of like the filigree, if you will, like the sort of the characters that don't, you've got the haves and the have-nots. Where do your characters fit in, or your NPCs fit in that aren't part of the story necessarily? Sort of your red herrings and things like that. Things that don't necessarily accomplish a purpose but might add texture to your world.
Well, those are generally I generally keep those kind of in the background in the sense that I don't necessarily prep certain characters that are just going to be thrown in there. I mean, I think kind of what you're asking about is like the shopkeeps and the personalities in town. Those
Mm-hmm.
are kind of planned. But like when somebody asks me DM what's in the tavern, like who's in the tavern, I'm drumming up stuff right then and there. If I don't have a
Sure.
plot
I
related character in there,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and you find that sometimes when you get a little creative and make a character like you described Boblin the Goblin sitting over in the
I
corner, the
fucking hate you.
characters always find that one NPC and they latch onto that one
Mm-hmm.
NPC. And although you didn't think that NPC was a part of the grand, it's I'm a big believer in concentrating, and this is just my DM style, but like concentrated personal storytelling. So when players do pick up on one of those background granular characters, they immediately get promoted to either a have or have not. I don't deal in like the nuances of like I'm just a guy who you can talk to in this tavern
Mm-hmm.
because the players have latched onto them and that makes them important to them, and I need to do
Mm-hmm.
service to that character and to my players by letting them be a item that they can interact with and get use out of. I mean, speaking to a random NPC in a tavern for an hour, yeah, if you want to, but I'll find a way through conversation to drop something
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
about some plot point. I'll talk about goblins or a commander who defected and took a squad with him or whatever. Like I will over the course of the conversation, no matter if it lasts 10 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, I'll eventually, just because that's the way that I like to storytell as a DM, I'll make that an important character because it's evident to me that the players want to engage with that character.
Interesting. Sure.
I
Well, everybody's the main character of their own story, right?
Right.
So
Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody can rise to some sort of prominence if you
exactly.
push hard enough.
Exactly.
And I have a little thing, two things. First about what you were saying in is I totally agree on what you're saying. You know, the people that have the haves and the have-nots, and like basically upgrading an NPC that you didn't think they would really care about into someone who has. But on the backside of that, I like, and I'm sure both of you have noticed this just from the way I DM and from playing in my world. I also enjoy having literally as much of everyone and everything with a name and something fleshed out for everything. So like for instance when my main party was in Baldenport and the paladin of the group literally they went to the market and she was like, who's this, what's their name, 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 and I had it all in front of me, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I was ready for this and this is why I was ready for this. And I'm like, none of these people are probably ever going to be talked to again, ever be mentioned again, but if they are, I have them.
And I
And
would
just
still
and oh,
sorry.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just my reasoning
I
for
was
doing
cutting
that
you
is
off. I'm
I
sorry.
feel like it gives a little bit more depth to the world to give it a little bit more of an
Mm-hmm.
immersion feeling. So you're not walking up and giving and being like, that was clearly a name made on the spot, like clearly like getting that from your DM, and that's just one of my things.
Mm-hmm.
My second bullet point for that is I've definitely made up names on the spot
Mm-hmm.
whenever it's something completely random. So that was one of my other things for tonight is as a tip for people, keep a list of throwaway names on like a note card or
Oh yeah.
something in front of you. And
Oh yeah.
when your players walk up to some random person in the street and ask what their name is, pick up that card,
Mm-hmm.
pick a name, and just say that name. And then at the end of the
And
session, just make a
immediately
note.
write a note.
Yeah,
Yep.
and at the end of that session, immediately go to your main notes, pick that name, put it in your main notes, and then just cross it off your list. And
Yep.
that and we can talk more about that later. But you had something, Avery?
I was actually going to specifically say the name list is the
Oh,
most
okay.
important thing in D&D. But
Yeah.
I was gonna counter that for me I don't take notes during a session,
So yeah,
and that's because I want as few narrative breaks as possible. I want if they're looking at me with well, there's times when it's absolutely necessary, but for me I want it to be the mood that would be created, right? And I can't do that if I'm looking at a note in my perspective. So that's pretty much, I was going to say, the only note taker. If they ask what's his specific thing, I would say he doesn't care about you. I would say he's brushes you off. He's getting back to work as a fishmonger.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, exactly.
that's an in-character thing that keeps us focused on the narrative.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, just to
Right.
clarify, I meant like real quick, elf fishmonger, like just real quick, because you're gonna look at that list later and you're gonna be like, which one did
Absolutely.
I use for that elf fishmonger?
Yeah,
Like, your players
yeah.
wrote it down. I guarantee you they did.
Oh,
because
yeah,
they're gonna go back
definitely.
and talk to that elf fishmonger later.
And
I usually just take that risk.
I'll agree with you too, Aiden, or not Aiden, Avery. God, you guys both have A names. Fuck me.
Mr. Boxic, bro.
Yeah, I know. Avery, to touch on your thing is I try to not take notes unless they're absolutely necessary during my sessions either. But the reason I do that is because I have the luxury of most of my games. I can go back and rewatch them, which is one huge luxury for me. Is like if I go when I try to always take bullet points of notes as soon as my session's over of like key things, and then I build my recap off of those key things. And then like if I like go through my recap and my players mention something during the session, and I'm like, man, that wasn't in my recap. Why can't I? And then it clicks, and after the session, I just go back, I pull it up, and I rewatch the session. I'm like, yep, okay, that needs to be written into my notes somewhere.
Yeah,
I
there's
usually
been a
just
time.
click on it.
There's been
If
a
I
yeah
forget
that too.
something, I click on it.
Well, the chances are, if you forget something, your players forgot it. So it's kind of rare they catch you off guard. But yeah, having put my campaign on YouTube as well, there's been a time or two we're going back and looking at something the way I described it is invaluable.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, obviously record only if your players give you full permission. But I can say if you've got the capability and the hard drive space.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you're just
it
recording
can be very
audio.
helpful.
Even if you're just
Yeah,
recording
that
your
too.
audio, you can. That's.
It's really hard to watch yourself. I'll tell you that.
It is. It's awkward.
I have
It's
tried
awkward.
to rewatch some episodes of Friday Night Dice to pick up on moments that I don't recall. I've tried to rewatch parts of my own campaign. It's sorry, I'm going off a tangent here. I cannot stand to watch myself.
I think I've just gotten used to it because I've watched so many episodes. The first few
it drives
times
me
it was
crazy.
definitely awkward.
It's an acquired skill.
It
Being
feels
able
like
to
the
tolerate
most.
your own face.
Yeah,
exactly.
like I said, I have a face for radio, man. Face for radio.
You got this whole thing. It reflects the light. It's not good for recording.
Oh.
So Cybox, like, you want to take our next bullet point?
I had one and I completely freaking forgot it.
Audio notes, man. You should have had the audio note.
Yeah, no kidding. What am I
Yeah.
doing? Oh, let's talk about session prep, pre-rolling things in terms of moments when there's going to be I like to, if I know that a combat is coming up, I like to pre-roll the enemy's initiative because it's a dice roll and I get out of the way. I don't have to do it. Do you guys ever consider pre-rolling on random encounter tables when traveling's coming up? Do you consider pre-rolling on? I had, for example, a moment in the game where I knew they were going to approach an NPC, and the NPC was going to recognize one of the characters, and they were going to cast a arcane spell that requires a save DC on the caster's part. I believe it's contact otherworldly being. I don't remember the exact spell, but they were going to cast a spell after recognizing and speaking with this character, unless the character was unreceptive to it, to basically reach out and get otherworldly advice. Do you guys ever consider pre-rolling stuff like that? Stuff that or are almost certain is going to be preordained just to see if it succeeds or fails?
Yes and no. I guess for me it depends on the situation. For me, and I guess this is more or less because this might be just my nature because I stream it. I feel like because I'm being watched, I feel like I should roll it while being watched, because if they don't see me roll it for me, then I'm like, maybe they think I'm just fudging the number. So that's why I say yes and no. But there's definitely been times where I definitely have pre-rolled initiative, and then even I've gone even though it's not necessarily rolling, but I go an extra step and I plan out a little strategically. I know this combat's happening. This is their initiatives. This is what they're gonna do on their initiatives, basically on their first turn. Just have it all planned out and ready in front of me, because I know how the monsters are gonna react to seeing my players.
It is contact that they're playing, by the way. That's
Okay.
a good point. The only response I'd have to that is the DM screen exists for a very specific reason.
Right, but you can see my hand
and I
moving
know that
normally on
there's
my DN
I
screen.
know there's a lot of discussion, and this is a whole nother DM's halftime report. But
Yeah.
like, fudging dice exists. I know there's a whole discussion around it, but the DM screen exists for a reason.
I think Avery and I had literally had this discussion just like a couple nights ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to get into it because that's a whole nother DM's halftime report.
Yeah,
if you guys
we'll
don't
talk
want
about
to.
it another night, definitely.
Like, that's fine.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
I'd love to
no,
get in that debate.
it is a
Exactly.
discussion. It is a discussion to be had. That's for dang sure.
I
Anyway, sorry,
don't.
Hex. Go ahead.
That's okay. I don't unless there's one very specific thing that I need to hide, and that's because as a general rule of thumb, and this is going back to the broader preparation thing, I sort of ghost myself on pre-sesh prep. Um, I talk a very loose, very vague idea. I know where people are, who they are, things like that, but I don't have any preordained actions unless there's, a very specific trigger for that action, like a trap. You step on the trap, an arrow shoots out. That's a specific thing, but everything else is dynamic because it's a world that exists. And in order for it to be real, that guy has to go to use the restroom every now and again, right? He's got it. There's all these little things that have to happen. Like there was, to give you an example of something where I didn't pre-plan it at all, and why I don't do things. Um, there was a moment, and sorry, let me take it another step back. It takes time for ideas to foment and for ideas to fully realize, and so the more time you give it, the better the idea becomes. That's what those long car rides are best for. Those ideas that you've had for a long time can grow and sort of crystallize. But there was a moment in a few sessions ago where there was this sort of build up to this moment. So one of my characters gave me the blessing of an amnesia backstory, and I loved it, and I had a ton of fun with it.
We love those.
Yes, it's the best gift you can give your DM.
They're a lot of
We
fun.
love
That's so the character himself was he was a half orc he woke some years ago in a battlefield, and throughout his exploring he found a clue, he followed it, and he was able to meet a childhood friend that recognized him finally. He didn't recognize him completely because he hadn't kept up with him in those intervening years, but in those intervening years that he had been away, so to speak, that he'd lost his memory for, he'd been a sort of slave, if you will, to an evil wizard. I know that's so broad and vague, but that's giving you the broad strokes version of it. But this childhood friend didn't get to see that. But the childhood friend did get to offer, your uncle is still alive. He's just a few hours away. You can go see him. And as part of it, I hadn't decided how he would. I thought he was going to be friendly, the uncle, to this character, Uggs. I thought that was going to be the case. And then I got there, and then in the moment, I realized, just as soon as Uggs realized, I knew that this uncle would have tried to find a son, would have tried to avenge the death of his whole family. So he would have followed and seen Uggs, and he would have realized that Uggs was a slave, and he wouldn't have known he was a slave. And so this uncle would not be happy to see Uggs because he knows that he's seen Uggs before, and it wasn't Uggs. So by leaving myself room to change things in the moment, I was able to make the better decision for that character, which was that he wouldn't be happy to see that character. And so as far as like exact pre-preparation, I do very little of it, and that includes dice rolling, because you never know.
Never
know.
Those are definitely some good points.
That's actually really good insight into, I guess I would say, what the opposite of what I do is. And this is not to disagree. For context, I believe I'm blessed or cursed, depending on your DM style, with a party who very much is looking for the next. And again, I said I run a personal game for players, and they understand that, but they're looking for that next thing they can pull on and follow, and they're there for a story to be curated around them and told to them and for them and with them.
Definitely.
It becomes that collaborative, like, I don't want to call it cinematic because I'm no director and no amazing DM myself, but it becomes this collaborative, like, yes, I want to explore this and I want to build on top of what you give me. So I think that's a very good insight into what is not my style, but that is very intriguing, and I'm gonna have to consider that because
So, and what
I
I'll follow up and kind of what it did for my character.
oh
Um,
yeah, go ahead. I would love to hear this.
so, in terms of the after effects of it, even that one tiny little thing flipped his entire narrative because he walked away from this entire arc as a failure, right? And that's it wasn't they succeeded, they got some treasure out of it, they got some excellent gifts from people they saved along the way, but this one small moment turned this sort of mission into um, uh, a wane instead of a wax, if you will. And
Yeah,
so
like
this
a
character
sad
has some
goodbye.
exactly, and now this character has something that they have to rectify, and now this character's story is more or less it's I don't need to give him all that much, and he knows exactly what he wants to do
Yeah,
for
Well,
the
this
rest
is
of the
definitely,
why
game.
I
definitely.
love these conversations, Hex, because
Mm.
I'm pretty sure one of my character's backstory characters might be reconsidered on what I imagined their initial meeting was.
Yeah, you
Hey,
can. There's a lot of power to giving your like soft failures, where
Yeah.
you can make if you can anytime you can make your player, not your character, but the player feel something, you've won as a DM. And I
Oh
oh,
made
yeah.
my
definitely,
character
yeah.
that split second decision made him feel something, and he's totally bought in now. And I know with every question he's asked, he's thinking about how do I go fuck up the
Hmm.
guy who made this happen.
And it gets them more invested in the reason why you're
Exactly.
doing it for them.
Exactly,
That
yeah.
is
Mhm.
actually freaking genius.
Yeah, no, that's
Thank you.
that's that's a really good way to really get your characters more involved in their
Mhm.
backstory and to dive even further into your world. I really like that. Uh,
Mhm.
so I'm gonna go to our next topic here because we had someone in chat ask, actually another player from from the stream game, but who you guys know is Holland. But his question for us is how do y'all prep for a backstory moment, be like before a session? So so for me, I kind of look I have a when my players give me their backstories, I go through and I make bullet points for those backstories, and I'm like, these are the places where these could potentially happen. This is where I want them to happen, and this is where I want it to go. If they pick up on the breadcrumbs and they follow and they go the way that I think they're gonna go, the way I prep for that is basically just like we can go back to, and this kind of gives a couple spoilers for anyone that hasn't watched my main campaign. But a few sessions ago, the paladin of our group, Cressida, she's on this mission to find out more about this mysterious god who no one seems to know anything about. Uh, and she's trying to find something, and they've party's been constantly plagued by this group that follows this man that's only been told to them or referred to them as the corrupted one, and they're following these breadcrumbs on trying to find more about the corrupted one, and as they are there's these little breadcrumbs and these blips that kind of Cressida's starting to finally pull strings on to how and what it pertains to her god, and finally a couple sessions ago, one of these bullet points in which I like I said and I've set up for this session, I was like, all right, I know they're gonna go invest. They went and talked to the guy who hired them for the job they did. He's gonna give some information that's gonna sound sketchy as fuck, so they're gonna go investigate it. But while they're on their way to investigate it, this is where my bullet point backstory comes in. There's gonna be something that's gonna catch their attention. Knowing my players and knowing the history that they've had in previous sessions, I know they're going to investigate it. Then I plan out like, okay, when they investigate it, this is how this ties into this person's backstory, and how do I want that to play out. So that's how I kind of, and I guess that's kind of like uh, a long version of what I'm trying to get across is when your players present you with their backstories, is I like to make bullet points of like key moments that kind of turn them and guide them in the way they want to go.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Hex,
I'm
I'll let you take the next one. Go ahead.
sure. So for me, I talked kind of about those broad strokes ideas. I sometimes it's I can think of a specific idea that ties in the amnesia arc. He's got some hard and fast events that happened in his past that I get to make up, and that's wonderful. But one of my characters, and I actually have this piece of paper here. I want to write. I want to refer to it. But one of my characters was very vanilla. She was new to D&D, and there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you can just make a character and play it, and it doesn't have to have a backstory that has interesting plots that I can tie into. for her, everything is going to be something moving forward. And so I just write down those vague ideas, and I create a timeline for some of the major events that might happen. I I swear to God, I hope they're nobody from that campaign's watching, because I'm about to spoil the hell out of it. But so for this one character, Luna, uh, she's an elf. She's a wood elf from the Lurkwood, and her parents are military. They're high-ranking military within the Lurkwood, and so I just thought, what could I do? What would involve her personally? And that's military, because that's what she knows. So it's something to do with the dark elves, because the dark elves and the wood elves in, excuse me, I guess technically moon elves in the Lurkwood now it's always something with those. And so this just random idea I had was, there's a plot to kill the queen, right? That's always, there's always a plot to kill the queen.
There's
You have
always
to
a
cut off
plot.
the
Yeah, there's all. That's definitely, yeah.
There's always a plot to kill somebody.
But I put a timeline on it, and for them, they went through a long period of downtime, and they've passed the point where the queen is now dead. And so, I had this plot that would have occurred when, should they have gone, and they had so many chances, they came so close to it so many times, and they never went to the Lurkwood. But now, past that, the plot was successful, and they have to go, whenever they return, they're going to find a mess to clean up. And that's just sort of, these vague ideas that just sort of happen in the background, and then they intersect with them. And then you just have to, once you figure out where it's going to intersect, you have to give them something to want. And then you just go from there, and then fill in the middle bits.
Yeah, definitely.
That is actually really great. I personally, me myself, I know I kind of talked more earlier about like telling a guided story and whatnot, but as part of that, I love setting deadlines. Like I have a calendar and I have dates on it, and there are certain times when things are either, like when I see it as a DM, I'm gonna have to make the decision: does it actually happen, or do I delay it by a week or whatever, because it's not thematically right. But like I love setting timed guidelines as a DM. Matt, to respond to you, that is a massive Omega Brain move and pretty incredible. And I've talked with a couple of the players, as one does, privately about the game, and we've kind of been looking for that guided moment when the story kind of picks up and becomes this. I mean, you know my style. Obviously, I've talked about it here, but my other players that I've talked with in Friday Night Dice main campaign don't disagree with me. Is like that guided personal story, and the moment you described is when most of us, like I talked with a couple other people after that session, and everybody was like, yeah, this is really getting great, like this is getting good, this is what we want. And like, yeah, so that's kind of amazing that you decided that was a part of a part of it. Like, I don't know, that in my humble opinion, like that's when the main campaign started to really pick up and get the momentum and the investment that
So,
a lot of people were like trying to, it was like chugging an engine. We're almost ready to go.
right, not to break off on a tangent, but as a personal style of DM, and I think both of you can agree from just playing in both of my campaigns, and Aiden, you've played in 3 of my campaigns now, so you can probably agree that
What am
my
I
style of
doing?
my style of DMing is the first few levels, because I always like to start at level 1. I feel like, and this is just my personal opinion, every campaign should start at level 1. Because you get more fun at low levels. I mean, the higher levels get really stupid and really crazy, but some of those really fun combats and some of those really fun interactions happen at low levels when a guard can actually threaten your NP or your player character, and it is an actual threat because they're not a 16th level wizard that can literally just drop a fireball on their head and toast them. So to get back to what I was saying is, I those early levels, I definitely try to drop some backstory crumbs, but for me personally, it's more about letting the party grow and mold into an actual party, rather than them pursuing their personal goals. I would rather them pursue growing as a party and interweaving into actually having bonds between people. So I try to give them reasons why they should work with each other and why they should stay together before going off and being like, okay, well, I need to go here because I have to do A, B, and C.
That's very good, and I
Agreed.
agree as well. That's you every time you do too much in one person's personal backstory, you risk alienating the other players.
Definitely, yeah.
Rarely will a player ever like stop playing a game because we're doing somebody else's backstory, but it's still important to keep it balanced
But they become
where
less
there are
engaging.
interesting. Exactly. Like to follow an example, I had no stake in Victor's fight the other day,
Exactly,
except
and I
for
felt bad
for
about that.
whatever. No, and that's okay. There are going to be those moments where you have to take an aside with certain characters. But when like if you spend 4 or 5 sessions 3 weeks in, and I'm like, who's this guy Victor? That's going to be tough. But for once you have that those sort of the mesh sort of combined a little bit, they can find reasons to be engaged for it
Yep.
because
Mhm.
they care about each other as a
Yeah,
party.
there definitely comes that moment, and that's when I talked earlier about like that tutorial area
Yeah, yeah,
that I
and
had
that's
set up in my world. Um, like getting the party to care about each other gives you the ability, especially as a DM, which can be very powerful, to
Mhm.
like drop the proverbial shoe of like, here is a character's backstory. This just hits you guys like a brick,
Absolutely.
and everybody at that table has that moment where they look to that character, and depending on the backstory, of course, you structure it however you structure it, but that character
right.
says, guys, I can't do
Mhm.
this alone. I need your help. And
Mhm.
everybody's like, yeah, don't even ask. We're going. Like, don't
Yeah,
be ridiculous.
Yeah,
And you
exactly.
can't, if you don't build the party chemistry early, you're not going to get that or get the
that's
opportunity to do that.
that's another DM's halftime report
Yeah.
right there too.
It's a
Yeah.
mouthful, I
I,
know.
That's a
I
big
did want
subject.
to
Yeah.
answer chat's question real quick. When it comes to backstory moments for me as a DM, it's tricky. It depends because a lot of my characters in my campaign have handed me pretty thorough backstories. I also asked for kind of thorough backstories, so I had this opportunity. But it depends whether or not I'm recounting a moment in current time or telling them something that happened in their backstory that's kind of uh, additional to it. Because I always feel like there's certain moments when I can explain to a player what had happened in the past, or because of what happened during I ran 0 sessions for all my players. Certain characters are obviously, for the sake of tension, left in an unknown state. What happened to them? So like, it depends on whether or not I'm going to be describing something to them through some of my characters are more deifically tied. One of them is a warlock. So whether I'm going to be describing it through a dream, that is me basically telling them. Whereas if they're going to be encountering NPCs from their backstory, uh, it is I always consider myself or even their entire like group or wherever they're from if they return home or whatever. I always consider myself like the time that has passed in between, and that's so critical to nail from a storytelling perspective in my opinion, because I think we talked on this earlier. There is nothing greater, and this is the reason why we don't take notes as DMs while we're running. There is nothing greater than the illusion that this world is real. As soon as you break that
Exactly.
illusion, your players step out of their characters. They're no longer at the table
Mhm.
mentally.
That's right.
They're checking their phone. They're browsing Twitter. They're doing whatever. So when it comes to backstory moments, if I'm describing something in a dream that hints at something that happened in their 0 session or happened in their backstory that they sent to me, it is in a way like me writing extra stuff to give to them that they can then work with, whether it be amongst the party or themselves personally.
Hmm.
Obviously, if it's like a dream for my warlock or whatever. But when they encounter an NPC or a group of NPCs, it's super critical to. I know that we talked about this, Hex. I do a lot of like pre-planning character responses and stuff. There are certain story beats and story moments that I desperately need to hit that I think are critical,
Mhm.
and nothing is more paramount than character backstory moments when you speak with those NPCs or
Mhm.
group of NPCs. To nail the transition of time, the transition of thought and
Mhm.
opinion, much like you described. I mean, I know you kind of flew by the hip on that one, and that's something that I can definitely take and run with, and maybe evolve
Mhm.
myself as a DM for.
Mhm.
Um, there is nothing more important to me than my characters' backstories.
Yeah, I think that's the meat and potatoes, right? Well, that's the
Definitely.
meat. The
Yeah.
random, slaughter is, killing the cool monster. That's the potatoes. And then you've
Yeah.
got like the treasure with that's the dessert, whatever, however you want to describe it.
Yeah, exactly.
But for me, to my specific method of dropping those little moments in is just, and I always go back to this. There's like sort of a purity. You mentioned this, Cyboxic, the sort of keeping the, gosh, what was the term you used? Making sure that world stays real. Right?
It's referred to as verisimilitude, which is basically
Verisimilitude.
the suspension of disbelief, is what it means.
Amazing word.
But it is essentially like portraying the world as real, which is the reason why we have those name lists. The reason why we do it all.
Yeah.
The reason why I assume the three of us, I don't know your game Hex, have homebrewed our worlds, because we want to be able to describe. This is actually, I have my next talking point now. We want to be able to describe something that is truly unknowable to the players, and they accept it as reality, and then we throw them straight into that reality. We describe a town, and they're walking through it. What do you guys do? You know, and we either improv, we have notes, we have shopkeeps, we have whatever, or we just straight up like improv the whole thing.
Yeah.
And either way, we are constantly like on our feet, shuffling, trying to keep this, like, put bricks to keep this illusion of a real world going, because otherwise there's no threat of jail if you turn into a murder hobo, or there's no threat of failure if for example a predetermined timeline doesn't work out. You know, the queen gets assassinated. If there aren't stakes and the world isn't real, you won't get an experience that at the end of the game, and of course you can run a D&D game however the heck you like. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
D&D used to be run 100% in dungeons. It used to never be on the material plane above you know, ground. It used to be Dungeons and Dragons used to be a like 15 session dungeon that you would go through and you would get loot, and that was the whole point.
Absolutely.
And it can still be that if that's what you want it to be. But if I, as a DM, am looking for that moment when I close the campaign and everybody goes, wow, that was incredible. And they remember it for 20 years, 30 years.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they will. They will.
Well, hopefully, if I do my job right, yeah.
That's what we hope for, at least.
We'll see. We'll see. You know, hindsight's 2020, and I can't promise success, but...
It's 2021 now.
Shiza. You're right. Man, COVID's got me on all sorts of weird stuff.
Evening, Vader. We can actually say hi to you tonight whenever you come in.
Yeah.
Hi, Vader.
Welcome, Pops. That's my dad.
That's Cybox's dad. Yeah. He's like he's like our most loyal viewer currently.
He's our biggest fan.
Yeah,
as my brother would say.
He's always here to support us, and I love it. So you said you had your next talking point, or you can go ahead and take it, or I'll take this one.
Yeah. Okay, so I've never done this, but I gave it some thought a while back. There's obviously a homebrewed personal world, which is a lot easier in my opinion, just from my, and again, I haven't done the opposite, but in my opinion it's a lot easier. If there's a town that I want to be, there's a town that I want to be. If there's this, that, or the other that I want it to be, and NPCs that I want, like bang, bada bing, bada boom. Take yourself out of those shoes, because I think the three of us run homebrew worlds, if you will. Take yourself out of those shoes. You don't?
I don't.
Okay, well, you might have good insight on this one. So I'll bring up the most common Forgotten Realms, Faerun. It exists, D&D lore. It's existed for multiple editions of D&D. I was thinking the other day, if I was going to run something in Faerun, what would be... My first thing, personally, would be, like, research of the lore and the world, and try to play within that space and that realm. Like, there's a lot of events that happen, like the Spell Plague and everything else, and I've done a good amount of research on D&D lore, because I want to not have a one-dimensional world. But in my world, obviously, I can change whatever the heck I want. When it comes to, like, Forgotten Realms, Faerun, the material plane that exists there, what would be your guys' first steps for potentially running a campaign, short module, short campaign, or any form, even a one-shot,
or even a side quest?
Set in those realms. Yeah, well, I won't spoil Balrosoa, but it's not. My world is not locked in a chamber by itself.
Yeah, I mean, as literally both of you know from playing recent sessions, my world is the same way. In both of your guys' recent sessions, the one for you, for Mesos, and for you, Tybix, it actually was very hilarious. And last week, in each of your guys' sessions, you guys made a trip into the fucking Shadowfell, and like literally out of nowhere. And I mean, so. Prepping for something like that is, I guess for me, I play on so in my world it's like it's based off the Shadowfell, but it's Shadowfell adjacent, I guess. So I guess I don't have nearly as much insight as I guess I would want to, but basically I looked up and I was like, okay, what are some aspects of the Shadowfell and how can I incorporate that into my my version
Yeah.
of it,
The
basically.
reverse world.
Yeah, basically how can I
Yeah.
incorporate it?
The upside down.
So
It's one
so
of my
yeah, basically I had
favorite parts of the Shadowfell. Love that so much.
so basically I had to just do a bunch of research into it and do some lore reading, and I'm like, okay, how do I incorporate this into mine and make it my own? And I guess my way for session prepping that is just looking at pre-established content and then reading into it and then putting my own twist on it and how I want to portray it.
I'll offer my insight on this. Being running
Yeah, I think you probably
a
have the most
pre-made
here.
world. I run. It's a Faerun. It's a Forgotten Realms Faerun campaign,
Nice.
and for one simple reason, which is that it's economical. I say that word all the time. It's economical, and there's a part of me that has that DM boner that wants to make this beautiful creation that is all mine, and I want to own it. But for my case, it's a little more time. Well, there's benefits to both. I'll start with why it's beneficial to be to do a pre-made world. It saves you time. It saves you having raw creativity, because a lot of what we do as DMs is copying, right? We copy and we change an idea until it's different and it fits our thing. But you've already got all this work done for you. You stand on the shoulders of giants. There have been, I would guess, millions of man hours put into the Forgotten Realms.
Right.
And
Easily.
instead of having to go and make up a tavern and a description for where one of my character's backstory's friend is, I know I can go see the taverns in Waterdeep and say that's where she'd be. And when the message comes like, hey, where are you? This is where I am. I didn't have to write that. I didn't have to spend the brain power on it. It's there. And that's the benefit of running a pre-made world, is it doesn't have to stay pre-made. It can become your own. And I took sort of like I sliced it off at the top and changed the things that I needed to fit my purpose, but I can still reference all of that information that has been done over 30 years.
Right, and it's all there for you.
Exactly. It's a Google away. It's all on the wiki. If you want to know about any
that wiki
god.
is amazing.
It's such a good wiki.
For ideas that you can incorporate into a homebrew world. My players, if any of them are watching, actually, Hex, speak up if you're aware of this. Maybe I'd like to talk to you more at length about it. Maybe we could do a whole DM's halftime report on it.
Yeah, we can.
In my world, I have introduced to my players the Seldarin, the Brotherhood and Sisterhood of Elves, the genesis of Corellon, and Sehanine, Moonbow, and all those gods and goddesses, the minor gods and goddesses that became the major ones that we know as the Dawn War Pantheon. I stole the Dawn War Pantheon straight out of freaking Forgotten Realms, because I was like, this is perfect. This is exactly what a Pantheon ought to be. That Brotherhood and Sisterhood of Elves is an element that I touched on that later on in the campaign is going to be pretty important.
I actually, talking about the wiki, like if you're running a pre-made thing, the wiki is your friend, because I came across an absolute gem for my players recently. One of the early relics that they were pursuing was this relic called the Eye of Shantae, and it's just a homebrew thing. It was supposed to be something for something that allowed you to see beyond barriers, and the person that gave them this quest wanted it. And so they found it, and they found that it was actually a prison for the avatar of Shantae. And so suddenly they had made this friend in Shantae, whose avatar was now free after hundreds of years. And so they were coming back to the area where they had freed Shantae. There was this lengthy dungeon. I'll spare you the details, but they consecrated the area outside of this dungeon, which is in the White Barrows, which are north of the Lurkwood. So they consecrated this area. And all of these things sort of combined, and I was like, well, this is a great place. Shantae would totally hang out here. And then, she would totally, if her avatar was going to do something, she might, or visit a mortal or make a shrine. This is a great place because they've cast the plant growth ritual, they've consecrated the land. It's sort of a clean place, and it's a place of rebirth, which is a very Shantae type of thing. But there's another god was very related to rebirth, which is Lathander. And so I was Googling, I was looking up Lathander, and I realized that Lathander and Shantae are lovers in the Pantheon. And I had
Oh
this
man,
cosmic oh my god moment, and it just all
that's
felt
so
good. And
good.
so me, if I had been making up the, I couldn't have done that on purpose. That sort of I couldn't have done that on purpose. It was this cosmic accident, and it led to this
Yeah.
perfect moment um, of just what would Lathander do if his lover of a thousand years had come back? They'd celebrate, and the place that they celebrated would be totally God touched. And so just to sort of, I read the wiki and I realized that something magical had to happen because of this thing that they made happen. In the wiki, that's what you get when you can reference material. You get
Yeah.
those little moments like that.
Yep.
You can find things.
And there is just a touch, Hex, real quick, because it's sorry if any of my players are watching, they might get a little bit of a spoiler. Not that it really matters to the mere mortals of the world, but the idea of gods and them loving each other is a very powerful tool to tell large stories that end in consequences for mortals. And it also bears in mind, I'm gonna get this wrong. If there's an internet out there watching this, they're gonna hang me. I believe in Elysium, the plane of the gods, like one day on the material plane is a year there. So like, or sorry, maybe that's the reverse. One day on Elysium, one day on the material plane is a
I
year.
think it is.
I
I
don't
think
know.
it's the reverse. 1 year on the material plane is 1 day in Elysium. Is I think what it is.
That's right. That
Yeah.
it's that's closer to. I'm not gonna get that number 100% right because I haven't bothered to look at it. But
Right.
like, you also consider the gods have so much time, so much time,
Hmm.
and it is, while it is kind of ridiculous for you to think about gods giving specific player characters dreams, when you think about it, their ability to give, geez, what it like, fucking 500,000 mortals a dream a night, and it's their coffee in the morning. Like
Exactly.
they don't care. They have the time, and like if your characters are deifically tied, by any means, even if they're not a cleric or a paladin, if they're closer deifically than, I guess, an agnostic theist, it can pay from a storytelling perspective to use that.
Absolutely, it's a really
That
good
is all I'll
device.
say.
I
Yeah, no, and it's like so obvious. It's right then and there. Like it's at your fingertips,
Mhm.
and it's the kind of esoteric stuff that when it happens to your players, they just take it as fact. And yeah, you can like, this is all, especially with the I'm sorry, I know we got talking about the planes of existence, but
You're
like
okay.
all of the planes of existence are like this. They are esoteric entities your players are never going to fully understand unless they pick up the DMG and start reading. And they're
Some
free
of
to
them do.
some of them do, and that's fine. Otherwise, it's this kind of really enigmatic area you can take your players to, and get large things story wise done with very little need for explanation.
It's not hard to get buy-in because it's a big, these the gods move in large steps,
Oh yeah.
and it's not like you don't, it's not a stretch to believe that that would happen. So if the gods start getting involved, you can, it's not, they're never going to be like, that's so unrealistic, that's crazy. Verisimilitude is
I,
not
I
lost.
I do want to read a short passage from the DMG, Matt, if you'll allow me, because
Yeah, go for it.
when you were describing the plane of Umberless, where a mountain once stands on the material plane, the corresponding feature on the Shadowfell is a jagged rock outcropping with a resemblance of a skull, a heap of rubble, or perhaps the crumbling ruin of a once great castle. The forest on the Shadowfell is dark and twisted, yada yada, it goes on and on.
Yeah.
And like, that's my favorite thing about the Shadowfell, hands down, is like it's like, it looks like the
It's
material plane, but it's a hellscape.
yeah,
And it's
exactly.
it's so fun to drop that on player. Like, when you were describing it, I was like, oh shit, am I in the Shadowfell? Because I'm a DM and I've read the DMG back to front, and
Uh-huh.
that's fine. But like, yeah, when you were describing it to other players, I'm almost sad you got a chance to describe it to my players that run for my campaign before I did.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's
Uh,
fine. It doesn't
it
bother me
it
none.
definitely. So I basically I had bullet points, and we're getting a little off topic here, so we'll circle back around to session prep,
we
but.
we do need to circle back
But we'll circle.
at
But
some
like
point.
when I because each of you were in a campaign where I got to describe. I had bullet points and stuff that I knew I had to touch on as soon as your guys entered into there to like set the scene, and it was so fucking fun describing the jagged spiring black castle off in the distance, and the decaying and jagged ruins of the desecrated land laying before you, and you guys are just like basically standing on top of this hill looking over all this, and it's just like you're trying to take it in like where the fuck am I?
Mhm.
Yeah,
I
Shadowfell be really fucky wucky, and I can't wait to explain it to my players.
I have something that I do as part of prep that it's relevant to
Yeah,
you
yeah,
mentioned descriptions. So as part of the suspension of disbelief, I try to talk as little as possible. And part of that is by making a pre-existing world. The world is as it is. They're just interacting with it, right?
right.
Once you get your players engaging with the world, you have to talk less and less, and you want to talk less and less. But so I have a rule for descriptions. If I'm going to describe something, if it's an entirely new continent, world, plane of existence, I get 3 sentences to describe it. If it's a new
Wow.
city, I get 2 sentences to describe it. And if it's a new room or they're walking down the road, I get 1 sentence to describe it. And that's it. And that's, for me,
Is
occasionally you break that rule, but that's as much as I'm willing to commit to in pre-planning.
Oh
is
yeah,
that does that tap into? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you guys. I just have a very, I
you're
think,
okay.
kind of important question. Does that tap into the idea of like, I don't want to say, I don't want to criticize you and say under describing a room, but does that tap into the idea of like, the kind of the D&D trope of like, if I say there's a vase on the table, there's a vase on the table. Like, is that part of like your intention with that?
No, the that's going to be. I have my muscle memory knows how to make a room detailed, right? I
Sure.
know, like I can draw on past examples. So if they want something specific, I'll give them specific. But for me, I'll give you the description. I have one of the descriptions I did. Maybe it's in another journal. It's in another journal. I'm sorry,
It's okay.
but the the point of it is that economy, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
allows them to it keeps me from talking. It allows them to form an image in their mind which is unhindered by sort of cluttered descriptions, and it lets them get into it, and then it leaves it open for interpretation. If they say, is there, okay, I want to go find the shopkeep, and then I think, okay, what would a the main city, I know what the main city in Silvery Moon is. Okay, you walk down the street, it's bustling with cities, there's merchants, in colorful garb, bustling this way and that. What are you looking for?
Okay.
And that
I
way,
see.
I've
I
got
think I see
Yeah,
what you mean. Yeah.
yeah,
I
definitely.
paint
N-
I give it the barest amount of life that makes it look real with that 1 sentence. And then I
That
let their brain do the rest.
that's pretty smart. If only because the only, from my experience as a player, I played through a whole campaign of D&D. Best thing I've ever done, by the way. We went all the
Hmm.
way to like level, geez, I don't know, 15 or something. Was amazing. Can't get enough of it. Want to do it again, but now I'm running a campaign, so screw me. Um,
I mean, you're also playing in one.
and that DM, who I respect a ton, like he's the reason why I started DMing, because he kept poking me like, when are you gonna DM? When are you gonna DM? Um, he described a lot, and he described a little every once in a while, and I guess to get to kind of respond to your point, there's only one time in that game when I truly visualized in my mind a setting, and it was when he over described a city, which is kind of the counter of what you had said. But I see
Hmm.
the value there because I personally recognize myself that I'm not a very visually imaginative person. Yeah, like you, I can describe a room and set a setting and do all that stuff, but I can't visually see it. The only time I visually saw something throughout almost that entire campaign was when he over described a city's opulence, and
Hmm.
it struck me as he kept talking. It was like almost a 3 minute description. As he kept talking, my brain started to shut down. I was like, oh god, this is beautiful. Like I can't do all
And
of
there,
this.
and
So
there,
I guess that's the counter, to what you said, and I'm not trying to
mhm,
oppose you. I'm just letting
sure.
you know, like,
Yeah,
That's a
I
very
don't
interesting
mean
idea
to.
because I think I think that most people probably would do better under the way that you describe things.
Mhm.
I
And
recognize myself that I'm very lacking visualization
mhm,
skills. Like I can't think of like visuals in my mind and like
mhm,
come up with a picture, close
sure.
my eyes and see it. Doesn't happen to me.
Mhm. And
I'm
that's
also like 100% left brain, so
sure. That's and that's okay. I'm not, that's my rule of thumb. I know that I can fit a lot of description in a sentence. I use a lot of commas in those sentences, don't get me wrong.
yeah, use
But
a comma, use a hypothesis or a
yeah,
A colon,
but
semicolon.
that keeps me
semicolon, yeah.
focused. And like I said, I obviously fudge that a lot of the time.
Hyphen,
And
not hypothesis.
there are definitely times where I can go into a longer description. But if I start with that sort of 3 sentence mark, I know that my
Sometimes people
starting
tune out.
it's going to
Yeah.
be compact, right? And there are times where you can hit on it, but I'd rather err on the side of caution and not, go into these lengthy descriptions all the time where I'm constantly bogging them down. You know, a dusty badlands is a dusty badlands. The wind blows through and there's carcasses everywhere.
Yeah.
You can
That's
see
Definitely.
fair.
the mountains in the distance, and that
That's
creates
fair.
a sort of vague
Yeah.
image that kind of paints the background.
Exactly. Everyone has their own image of what that looks
Mhm.
like, so everyone kind of gets their own mental picture of what they see without
Yeah.
you trying to add in too much extra that kind of muddles the waters for them and kind of changes their
No,
viewpoint of it.
that's a very good point. Everybody's seen Dagobah. Everybody's watched Dune.
Yeah.
Like,
And
not everybody's watched
there's a
Dune.
point to
Like,
be made there, which is that because the people will all have different images in their head, and you can never 100% verify what the world looks like to everyone, you can
Hmm.
never actually get everyone on the same page.
Right.
And so if you spend so much time, you're going to try and force them into this thing, but eventually you're going to just say, well, yeah, it's kind of a thing, and it stays sort of vague. And then you
yeah.
have a little bit of flexibility with they say,
Okay.
okay, I
You've got
want
a
kind of well.
really good point. You got a really good
Yeah.
point because there's been many a time, especially. I know we're getting way off topic of session prep, but like during puzzle spaces, boy, those are challenging to describe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Drawing.
Because every other couple sentences, someone's asking for a redescription.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh,
That's a big thing.
just to circle
Go
back
ahead.
onto our topic, but still staying with descriptions here, to kind of respond to what you're talking about, Hex, is for me when I'm setting up descriptions of cities or of people, of taverns, I try to do kind of what you say. But then there's instances where, like, for instance, when my main stream party got to Baldenport, this was the culminating point, the beginning point for almost all of their stories. So I knew I had to
Mm,
overdo it. I had to throw stuff in
mm,
that everybody had something to tie on to and pull on. So that's why I
mm,
was like, for instance, the one that comes to mind is for Kelric, and I was is like, as soon as you crest over that hill, the first thing that catches Kelric's eye is the glittering sheen of metal bouncing from the sun off of the side of this massive galleon that's sitting in the bay that's completely covered in metal. And because he's from the tinkering city of Zagharat, to him, that instantly just clicks in his mind. He's like, oh shit, there might be people that know me here.
yeah, absolutely. And that's like I said. There's no rule that the only rule is that rules are broken, right?
Right.
And there's definitely times where I will go on and on, but that just gives me a good, as far as I should quantify that. That is what I prepare.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
I prepare those descriptions ahead of time, and
Hmm.
that gives me a starting point to branch out if I need to when I get to the
Right.
session. Hmm.
Or
So
That's fair.
when do you guys want to take the next bullet point or whatever we're
I I have a question for you guys.
okay.
You mentioned this Cyboxic puzzles. What do
Oh,
you
okay.
guys? What's your puzzle thing? What are you guys doing with puzzles?
uh
Matt, you want to go
And
first or should I?
so for me, I have for me it depends on the party. So when I'm prepping my puzzles and when I'm prepping the difficulty of my puzzles and the descriptions of my puzzles, I really have to think about my players and because for me and I've ran into this, the different parties like different things as all parties do, and some parties like those more difficult puzzles where they have those brain teasers. And I know for me at least, and Aiden and Suboxic will know this well. My brother in our campaign is one of those people that loves those hard puzzles. I literally gave them a cipher I gave my brother a fucking cipher unfinished without the key. He spent the whole session figuring it out without the key. And like there are just people that live for shit like that. So for me, when I'm prepping puzzles, I really have to look at my party first, and I'm like, okay, how do I want to build this puzzle to engage my party, but at the same time, I don't want to make it too hard for some people, but for other people, I want to make it really like give them a brain teaser. So my thing was is like when I was prepping that specific session, and I gave them the cipher. My brother instantly, he's like, I want that, while the rest of the party was like, no, let's wait for the key. So while the rest of the party continued to wait for the key, and his character just kind of looked it over and kept studying it, well, he himself in character figured it out before they even found the key. So while the key was there for the rest of those players in case they did come across it, so they could still figure out the puzzle, I knew right then and there that there was him and even another guy in the group that wanted to do it without it because they wanted the challenge. So I guess to answer your question, when I'm prepping for puzzles and how I prep puzzles, I try to give them a two-tiered level of difficulty where the first one comes out where it seems kind of difficult, but then there's the second tier where like as soon as they find the clue or they find the thing that helps them, it becomes easy.
Absolutely, absolutely. I asked specifically because I'm terrible at puzzles, and I 100% Google every single puzzle I put into a campaign.
I've definitely
I keep,
Googled puzzles, but what I try to do is take the idea and so
you make it
this
fit.
this goes a little off tangent. So a buddy of mine who does some mini painting for me, his name's Brett. You guys have seen he's seen his work. He told me
His work is
he's an artist, and he told me a long time ago. He's like, as an artist, as long as you take if you can use other people's work, so long as you change 30% of it, you can call it your own. So I really took that to heart, and I'm like, so I find other people's puzzles, and I'm like, all right, if I can change 30% of this, I can call it my own and not feel bad about it.
The plagiarist law. Yeah, that's my it's not a strength of mine, um, coming up with compelling puzzles, and so most often I go look for sort of these. I want, depending, like you said, depending on what is suitable for the area. Like there's very simple puzzles which are just put the stone in the spot, and
Right.
that's a 3 minute figure out. But the more
Well,
complicated puzzles,
I suppose to respond, I touched on this earlier, and obviously I was not speaking about puzzles directly,
Right.
but when it comes to creating problems for your players, sometimes our goal as DM should be, in my opinion, to create problems that they can't solve by rolling a history check or any other skill or ability on their sheet. And
Make
I
them
would
use their
argue
brain.
that itself is a puzzle. Use their NPCs, use their tools. What can we call on? What can we rely on? What can we do that isn't some number on my sheet and I roll a d20 and it says it works? When it comes to actual, like, I know you probably Hex were asking about like dungeon puzzles or like just whatever. Me personally, and this is because I personally don't like it. I hate riddles, but that's fine if you want to put a riddle in your game. The reason why I doubly despise riddles or other esoteric puzzles that aren't like put this stone in this place is because it begins to separate the player from the character. If I have to solve a riddle and the DM doesn't tell me to make like a wisdom check, then am I solving the riddle or is the player character solving the riddle? Am I solving the puzzle that is based around weight in certain water basins or weight on certain scales, or are the players solving it? Because at the end of the day, what something like that usually requires, unless you've got somebody very sharp in your party, and I'm not saying that your cipher business, Matt, was wrong. I would never say that. I think you engage. You also got to read the party. Some parties enjoy that. I've been in a table where personal puzzles that take a moment where you got to draw it out on a piece of paper. Everybody loves it, except for me, which I was fine to let the other people solve it. That's fine. I prefer things that, and again, this goes back to, I'm gonna say it a million fucking times, the illusion, the verisimilitude, the illusion of reality. As soon as you are faced with a riddle or a puzzle, you're ripped straight away from your character, and you're thrown straight into your mind trying to figure out what it is, and then you've got, no offense to a low intelligence or low wisdom character, but you've got a low intelligence or low wisdom character being role played by a player who's obviously solve this riddle, spouting out the answer.
Mhm.
And they're a barbarian, but they figured it out. Um, I try. I haven't really thrown too many puzzles at my party beyond like the real life puzzles of like how do we solve this problem without our character sheets. And like I said, I would argue that like NPCs can be elements to solve a puzzle. If there's a web of lies, a web of conversations can reveal the truth. Those are all puzzles in a way. They're not traditional, not the way you
But
think of them.
they're
Right.
not binary
Right.
puzzles like a riddle. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to like dungeon puzzles, I personally, like, this thing needs to be lit. This thing needs to be extinguished. Like, keep it very succinct and
Hmm.
so that anyone realistically could have figured it out.
Hmm.
And like, you can even put in fail safes, like, if for example somebody doesn't recognize that like this is leading up to a pattern of danger, then have a trap. If you succeed or sorry, fail to succeed the puzzle, have a trap waiting for them.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then explain to them
Danger.
like, "Oh, you got the door open, but that triggered the trap."
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Yeah.
the way I think of puzzles.
I
I don't enjoy puzzles that'll rip players out of their characters.
so I guess I have two instances here, and one I think each one goes to each extreme in what you guys are talking about that kind of come to mind as we're talking about this. The first one was in the recent stream, in the second episode of the Silver Sparrows short campaign I'm running. Genera, the bard in the group, the party was exploring this library of this archmage, trying to find some information. And while they were just searching around and seeing what they could find, the door was locked and nobody had looked at it yet. And there were some arcane runes written around the door, and it read something along the lines of the more knowledge you know gains you gains you entry. Something along, I don't have my notes in front of me, so I don't know exactly what I wrote, but it was along those lines of something having to do with knowledge will gain you entry. So just as he's looking, he's like, I want to look at the bookshelves and see if any book stands out to me. Rolls a stupid high perception check, instantly finds the book he needs to open the door without even looking at it. So it was one of those things where like it was a puzzle that they didn't even know they were looking for. Uh,
Hmm.
and that's kind of like one of those lower end ones where it's like it's an easy puzzle, but it gives them an opportunity to kind of stop and think and try and figure it out for a second. So I guess Aiden is like it's a riddle in itself, which I don't know if you can tell me your thoughts on this and if you don't like that sort of thing.
Well, I
But
think
to
that would be fair.
but to me,
Is the
it's it's a riddle, but then it's a really simple one for the room to where they
right, but a
yeah,
phrase like that leads you to a bookshelf where you roll investigation and then you find the answer
exactly, yeah,
based on your character's abilities.
right.
And you obviously would be like, "Oh, well, who's going to figure this out? Hey, Brainiac, get over here." You
So
know.
yeah, so my second one that is more to the extreme that I think might have ripped people out of character, but it also I tried to build it in a way in which it did keep people in character. Was it takes me back to where before we streamed in my campaign in Zahara, where I built this massive room with six statues in it depicting the six different prime beasts, and in
I
each
recall
statue
this.
there was a crystalline almost a clear crystalline orb, and what the party needed to figure out to do was each crystalline orb was attached to each prime beast, and each prime beast represented an element. So what they had to do is somehow replicate that element in order to charge that orb in order to open the secret staircase, and to kind of give them hints towards that throughout the room. I made this giant tapestry that I just gave a huge description of across the ceiling that kind of depicted each beast's abilities and how they're related to their elements and their creation and everything. Just gave them this like huge description, and then I was like, all right, have at it. So like I guess that could be considered an instance where like I kind of like ripped them out of their characters of their character of being in character, kind of like ripped them out of the immersion where they had to stop and think like, how does all this tie together after that description?
No, I can definitely I recall that specifically. I'm actually looking for my notes right now on it to see if I have anything interesting written down. All I want to say is, as my DM, I imagine you noticed, or maybe you didn't. I don't know. You were busy answering a million questions. Um, yeah, here it is. I found the notes. Yeah, I had this ridiculous chart drawn out, and then I crossed half of it out because I didn't
Mhm.
understand what the hell was going on. You were busy answering description questions, but maybe you noticed as a DM that I completely fucking turned off my brain. I said, "Oh, well, other people can solve this. I'm gonna sit here and try to figure out what the hell's
Right.
even happening."
And I was still, this was very early on in my DMing
Yeah.
experience. So looking back, I see how I could have done it differently. But I guess that's like my idea of like that's probably the most extreme puzzle I've ever thrown at people, where I didn't give them much information. I just kind of expected them to stop and think about it and figure it out for themselves
There's
without
notes
like,
on like Hothrath and everything else.
yeah, without like giving them without giving them the ability to really figure it out with a character skill.
Yep. Cat feline, ivory harpy, white beast, white female. I think. I don't know. Can't
Yeah.
remember. All my notes are crossed out because I gave up.
We're really good at this tangent thing because we like talking about all of the cool stuff.
Oh yes, we are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We are very good at getting off topic.
Yeah.
I think we
it'll
said
happen.
the word preparation, so it counts.
Yeah, I mean, this is all about
Preparation.
puzzle preparation and how we're
Yeah.
relating those puzzles
Yeah,
back to
I
it.
understand.
So,
I definitely print images ahead of time of the puzzle. Like if there's a visual to the puzzle, I print it ahead of time.
I've never done
Even
that,
if it's just
but I definitely need to.
a small image, even if it's just, or if I at worst I hate, unless I absolutely have to, I hate drawing things out. But even if I have to, I'll draw the basic shapes or have them printed out so that they can get a small visual of the puzzle. Because it's tough. It's detached, right? We're
Right.
already
Yeah.
convinced people to pretend there's something else.
Well, the
And
one
you
thing
have
I'll say to echo myself is if you don't provide a visual and it's a complex enough puzzle, your players will start drawing one. So you might want to give them one.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
definitely.
And it's probably going to be wrong.
Well, yeah, it probably will be what they drew. Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I remember a multifaceted puzzle with like a couple like liquid basins, and we had a bucket, and it was one of those traditional like, if you have a bucket and this much water, how do you fill all these so they're whatever? I forget.
Hmm.
But like it was so hard to picture.
Right. And some of those things really are. It doesn't matter how much descriptions you throw at it. It's just trying to picture it in your own head. It's kind of it just
Oh yeah.
it gets so obscured and strayed away from what you as a DM are trying to depict to your party. Uh, so I'm gonna go on to our next bullet point here so we can stay on topic because I have a couple more that I at least want to touch on. Uh,
Hmm.
So during session prep, if you have a certain direction you want, and Hex, you and I actually talked about this the other day, and that's why I made a bullet point for it. If you have a certain direction that you want your party to go, and there's an option ahead of them that either is going to split the party or have the party almost divided on what they want to do. How do you push your party into the direction that you want them to go without forcing the like prepping that push or that nudge without forcing them to feel like they're railroaded?
Create a natural consequence. And this, you can't pre-plan that, unfortunately. It just has to be natural in the moment, right? Because you're trying to you're trying to predict, you're trying to plan something based on something you don't know is going to happen, and
Right.
that's where you run into that sort of unnatural thing. You create, for me at least, that's my method, is to create natural consequences if I need them to go somewhere, or I don't create consequences at all, and I let them figure out what's going to happen.
Sure.
And that's part of like the purity of what's happening. I might have to deal with them being split up for a little bit, but eventually they're going to figure out that they're better together. Usually the pull will bring them back together.
Right.
In this specific example, we talked about being in the basement. Matt brings up this example because my character opted not to go into the dark portal, which was a great idea. I want to mention, not to go in the portal at the time. It ended out okay, but one of the characters that was on the other side of the portal came through and forced me through the portal. But that was a method to get me with the party because I was the only person staying behind. But just as good would have been, or if not better, would have been the people who had locked us in the basement chasing me. I'm weak, exhausted. I've just gone through this fight. If two dudes with like with clubs came down, I would have been through that portal in a second.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
And
that's sort of like,
we had that conversation after that session, and I see now looking back how And I guess for me personally, because what I did was as I gave. Because what originally happened was is two people went through the portal, and they're in this instance that he's talking about. And what they did is they tied ropes to them to try and see if they could pull them back through if needed. Well, when they passed through the portal, the ropes fell loose because they're passing through a plane of existence. Those ropes aren't going to pass with them and be able to just pass back through. So the other two people chased after him, and or the other three people chased after him, and then Tybex Hex's character was just there like, I'm not going into this portal. That's fucking nuts.
Mm.
So I had like two or three instances where I was like, okay, if somebody from the party comes down to it and they don't go, I have these ways where I was like, and looking back, I could, and this is where getting back to prep, how I could have prepped for it, because I prepped for, okay, there's this white mage that they're chasing down this one mage, and his counterpart, the white mage, and this mage they're chasing down is trying to lead them there. He's trying to entice them to follow him and trick them and lead them down this path. Well, this white mage being a more cunning and a more arrogant, or I guess not cunning, but a more arrogant person. If someone doesn't go through, he's gonna be like, well, I'm gonna go fucking force them to go through, and they're not gonna have a choice. So when Tybex is the only person that comes there, I described to him, I was like, you turn around and you feel like this white hot singe across your back, and as you turn around, your character's blinded as he's blasted back through the portal by a spell, and you just see the glimpse of this person with Fey ancestry and just pure white hair and like glowing white eyes and this like white mage basically that kind of caught his instance, and that was kind of the way I prepped for that. And looking back, I guess and I do agree with you. That's something maybe you can't really prep for 100% at least, Hex. And looking back, there is different ways that I could have done that. Where I was like, okay, you know, if they don't go through, I could have prepped like, well, then the bartender upstairs is going to go downstairs eventually when they stop hearing commotion because there's not a fight
Yeah.
going on anymore. He's going to go check and see if bodies are there or if people are still there, and he needs to take care of them.
Hmm. There's a lot to be said for making the party, like in the case where, well, take it back a step. There's a lot of magic to an adventuring party, right? There's
Right.
a sort of like invincible feel where everybody's there and you can, leverage your collective strengths against someone else. But when somebody wants to be on their own for a second, I usually just let them feel the real world.
Yeah.
They're insulated by there's the warlock who can talk to anybody. There's the cleric
Yep.
who can heal them.
Yep.
There's the barbarian who can stand in the way. But if you're the druid who's in a basement, or the cleric, whatever, who's in the basement, and there's three dudes who don't really want to talk and just want to take your shit and beat you up, then
Yep.
you sort of make them vulnerable and you can naturally push them to be as close to the party
You
at
can
all
naturally show them that while they are an incredible individual, they are not a jack of all trades and certainly a master of none.
times. Yeah, we kind of blank out on that, and we think we're going to do okay. Like Tyvix in a fist fight is going to get his shit rocked. As soon
Right.
as those spells start going away, he's going to get put on the ground.
As soon as
But
the wizard's
until-
approached with a sword, he's in trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what the paladin and the fighter and anybody else who's there is for. I do want to touch real fast. I think. Sorry, I'm reading chat.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
Animated Ice just he's been accidentally watching an old stream this whole time where when he thought we were live.
Oh no.
I'm so
Oh, no.
sorry. Oh.
That just completely blanked my response. What was the question? Jeez.
Nice.
Our question was
Splitting the party.
right.
I can say I definitely kind of prepped for this, but it was big strokes. I guess I was at one point prepared to run my party in two different groups for like a couple sessions, because there was a big disagreement about the tutorial area that was geographically split that I talked about in my world. There was essentially, based on the tools that they had, they knew that they could go north to a port town and catch a ship, sail around the continent, or they could go south through the swamp. And for a while there, they were in a lot of disagreement about whether or not to get on a ship or go through the swamp. So I basically, because that was what they had, I let them know based on some character history rolls and just general character knowledge of like where they've been. Like, yeah, the swamp is dangerous, but you don't know what's out on the water either, and piracy has stepped up a bit. So I basically threw them the pitch of like, do you want swamp dungeon or do you want like sailing adventure? And there was a personal split between characters, I don't know about players, about which way to go. And for a
Mhm.
while there, I was thinking to myself, well, I'm gonna have to run a couple independent sessions and hope that everybody makes it through the other side if they really choose two different paths.
Mhm.
Um, but I let them. I guess the natural consequences that you spoke about was I let them know like the seas are dangerous. You never know what the hell's out there.
Mhm.
Right.
The swamp was the last known battlefield before it was a swamp of a great and terrible war that ended. Who knows what was left behind? Like, think
Mhm.
about. I like to use this analogy a lot when I talk about the swamp, but like, think about how America or any other civilized country conducts wars. How much equipment we leave behind. We leave behind sometimes weapons, tanks, all sorts of crap that just
Mhm.
gets unaccounted for, and all of a sudden, bada bing, bada boom, it's in the hands of randos who have managed to pick it up and figure out how to use it.
Mhm.
So I basically told them not natural consequences, but like world expectations is like the ocean is dangerous,
Mhm.
but hey, that was the battleground of a war, and there's a lot of things left behind, and people don't come out of that swamp.
Absolutely.
Um, and that led them to understand we can't split. We got to go together.
Mhm.
Let's go this way. They came
Hmm.
to an
Yeah.
agreement.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
I think maybe that's I don't enjoy the idea of my party splitting any more than I think most players enjoy the idea of the party splitting because
Mhm.
that's the general adage of D&D, don't split the party, yada yada.
Until
Mhm.
your players are literally chanting "split the party,"
Mhm.
which.
That's true.
For me, I'll usually try to discourage it, but if it's gonna happen, then I mean, player agency's mm, damn near paramount, and if
Yeah.
we got to do it, we got to do it. And
Yeah.
For a while there, like I said, I was planning on running two different little groups in separate sessions and then
Mhm.
they were going to the same place. So I presume unless one of them changed their mind, like one group changed their minds, they would have met back up. So I was for a minute there, I had prepped a couple hours in each direction of content and
Mhm.
threw them this option at the end of the previous session, knowing that they would come to a decision. And yeah, I was ready to split the party for a while. Would have been
Mhm.
weird.
So that ties into my next bullet point, what you just said there, Aiden, which was my other one for the night
I can
is
still hear you, but I'm gonna step away for a sec.
okay, yeah, you're good. Is when you're prepping for your next session after having a session is something that I like to do, and this I think this is a good tip for any DM, and I know that I've talked to some people before, and they just I don't know if they feel nervous about it or they just don't want to accept it. But for me, I like to go to my players and I'm like, give me some feedback about last session and let me know what your character's goals for where you are. Like, what are you trying to do? Like,
Mhm.
what are your goal? What is your
Mhm.
character's goals right now? Because that gives me the ability to prep for the next session. Like, okay, I know Tybex wants to go to the House of Black and White, so I'm gonna need to prep for stuff that has to do with that and for a way for him
Mhm.
to potentially get there. So that's for me from a
Mhm.
DM standpoint to a player is talk to, and this is my main bullet point, is talk to your characters after your sessions before your next one. Like talk to your
Mhm.
players. Really like get a
Absolutely.
get a feel for what their character wants to do and what their goals
Mhm.
are beyond just their backstory. Like what are they wanting to do currently? Like they have their overarching thoughts and wants and goals, but there's still those main things that they're trying to do currently that they don't because they're not like,
Mhm.
they are constantly thinking about their backstory from a player standpoint. Of course, their character is, but from a player standpoint, they're more or less thinking currently about what's currently going on. So if you play more into what's currently
Mhm.
going on, and then you can find ways to either tie it into their backstory or find ways to get them onto the path of their backstory, then they just look at you like you're a mad genius, and you know it really works out. So my main bullet point for at least a tip for some newer DMs or people that are looking for it is don't be afraid to just straight up ask your players outside of a session, what's your character's goals right now? What are you trying to what are you trying to accomplish?
I would. I 100% agree that your players are the best source of feedback. And for me, I don't want to remove the element of surprise, and so I never outright ask. And again, this is another thing where I hope my players aren't watching, but I ask them pointed questions, and I about specific things. I don't really ask them what their goals are. I say,
Hmm.
hey, how did Scythe feel about fucking Uggs finding his long lost uncle? And he
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like,
I've
oh,
done that
Scythe.
too.
He's like, the this character's response was specifically like, Scythe doesn't really care. He's just kind of along for the ride. He wants to go back to fucking Waterdeep.
Yeah.
And so now I've gotten without sort of, I mean, they're still, they know what they want to do, and I don't
Hmm.
have to say, okay, I don't want to, phone it in and say, yeah, well, look, I know that you want to go to Waterdeep now. I'm going to try and glean as
Right.
much information as I can without ever directly
Right.
asking. But it's
Yeah,
very
and I.
easy.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
And then that's how I do what you do is I glean those informations, and that totally guides my preparation. And at that
Yeah.
point, I know what I need to do.
I
Yep.
guess
And
and I don't mean to cut you off there, and I just want to give
that's
more
fine.
lip. I guess I don't. I don't. I do try to keep that element of surprise, like you say.
Hmm.
So I don't. I'm not. I have before
And you do
like
a great job, Matt. By the way.
so guys like I guess maybe the way I said it I came across like maybe I am a little bit more direct, but like you guys have seen the way that I've messaged you guys about your characters and some stuff, and
Hmm.
sometimes where like maybe I'm a little fuzzy about what people are trying to do right now, because for instance recently I asked Aiden, I was like, what's Kelrick trying to do right now? Like I know his overarching idea of what he wants to do,
Hide.
and what he yeah, and what he's currently, and I know really what he's currently doing because he was working on creating a custom spell. So I was like, and I already knew how I had prepped for him to complete that and for him to get the information he needed for that. But then I was like maybe there's something more there, and like I guess I was trying to uh, in a sense over prepare. So like I asked him specifically, I was like, is Kelrick trying to do anything else currently while he's in Baldwin Port, while he's here in like one of the probably the first major city that that the party has seen, because this is the first instance where like the party had came to Baltimore. This is the first instance where they had access to like an actual magic shop, an actual
Mm-hmm.
blacksmith,
Yep.
an actual tinkerer's shop, like multiple taverns, a massive market, different divinity temples. Like this was the first time they ever had access to those things. So what I really wanted to make sure was is everybody got done in that town what they needed to do before I pushed and led the story in a different direction, because I
Well,
didn't want
an
some.
answer to you. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
An answer to you is and this is because of, we can have this discussion way later because now we're off tangent and I'm going to get back to it. I promise.
It's still part of the
Um,
session prep.
Kelrick got what he needs because he's a wizard and he gets things like sending and his spell that I custom built for the purpose of this. I got as a player and as I guess as a character what I felt I needed to open up and progress my backstory on terms that were acceptable to.
Sure.
Um, and I kind of shoehorned it in last session. I kind of regret it, but it's
It's
also D&D, and you're allowed to whatever be excited about sharing something.
yeah.
But to get back to the point, uh, I kind of want to go back to pivot off of what your statement is yeah, always be approaching your players, and I want to go back to something Vader put in chat a while back, and I noticed it. I know we've had this discussion, Vader, Dad, a couple times, but like he says, I believe the story is writing is so amazing. It's like a play or writing a book or more so a movie. I salute you. And I say yes, but I also say no. See, because if I wanted to write a book based in my world, I'd just write a book based in my world. But that ain't the kind of story I'm trying to tell. So it's very crucial, in my opinion, to approach your players, get feedback, make sure
Hmm.
that you're still telling the story for them and with them, but on their terms, and that you're hitting narrative moments because you have narrative moments as a DM
Yeah.
that you want to hit,
Hmm.
and you also want to make sure that you hit the narrative moments that they want to hit because they've gifted you this character, they've invested themselves in 4 hours a week or 4 hours every other week or whatever.
Right.
You want to make sure that those characters are getting the justice that they need and the players are getting the experience that they're looking for.
I
So always be approaching them.
I have a good point on that, and what you guys have heard me say many times is it's your guys' game, it's your guys' story. I'm just telling it,
Yeah.
and I will always try to live by that code basically. I will always try to let it be your guys' story, and let you guys live it or play it out however you want it to. I'm just gonna tell you how it's happening, and of course, I have my overarching stories of what I want to happen and what could possibly happen. But in the end, if you guys say fuck off, I'm gonna go do something else, I'm gonna be like, cool, that shit's in the trash. Let's do something else.
Yeah. It's
Absolutely.
always about the characters. And I've thought about, obviously I've only DM'd this one game, but I want to kind of extrapolate a little. I know we're off session prep and we'll get back hopefully, but
We're
I also
circling
want to do
back.
Vader's question. I want to do Vader's question in the chat too.
Oh,
The world that
I
I've
missed it.
built, the world that I've built is based around the 6 character pitches that I had in the initial campaign pitch I gave them. But in 10 years, if I'm running for a different party, a different group, and they approach me with different needs and desires and forms of storytelling, like I'll wipe the board. It's all just names and cities.
Hmm.
If they need another key NPC, have or have not somewhere, they'll get it. Like it's a framework for me to tell a story within, but it's always going to be centered around the characters.
So,
I'll steal it, Matt. I'll steal it.
okay, go ahead.
Uh, Vader asks, and this is off session prep, but let's answer it because
Yeah,
it's chat.
it's a good.
What
It's a good
inspired
question
each
too.
of you to become dungeon masters?
Okay, I guess I'll go first since I'm the main host.
That's a great
So
question.
for me, what inspired me to be a good dungeon master? So I had always had and always have had a and this might stem from me being having ADHD and my mind always running fucking a mile a minute, and I'm not afraid to admit that. But I've always had a very in-depth imagination. So for me, I always had this idea of where I wanted to write my own comic, and in that comic, I had this idea of the kind of world I wanted to write that story for. And then I got introduced to D&D, and I was like, this would be a fucking cool world to run for D&D. But then I'm like, at the same time, I'm like, well, I can't necessarily write a world and then play in it. So I have to learn how to run the world. So for me, that was my inspiration to become a DM. Was I have this world that I want to play in, but I can't necessarily be a player in it, so I need to be the person who tells the story and creates the world. So I have to become the whatever you want to call it, the dungeon master, the game master, the person who makes the world, the person who tells the story. So that was my initial inspiration was the idea of my world and the things that I had that I had always imagined about and the things that all and the idea of this world and the things that went through my mind. God damn it! I am not talking about Shrimp Island.
You'll tell us more, or else we've got your number, Matt. Give us the
uh,
Shrimp Island.
no, okay. So,
How did you not? Real quick, how did you not finish that continent in the map making tool and say, that
I
looks like a shrimp?
I have to hold on now. I have told this off stream. I've never said this on stream. If everybody, fuck, I can't pull it up right now. If everybody were to pull up my map right now and look at it, and think about the description of Baldwin Port, how there is a massive statue of Uditir with her outstretched arms, holding a massive piece of blue aether, kind of greeting people into the Azure Lagoon in the bay of the city. If you look at Shrimp Island, it looks like a fucking face with an arm stretched out.
It's
I don't know.
interpretation.
Looks like a shrimp to me.
Interpretation.
So
Yep.
that
Looks like a
that
shrimp.
100% was done on purpose, and then that session where Nil was like, "I want to go to Shrimp Island," I was like, "Where the fuck is he talking about?" And he fucking points to it.
Nah, looks like a
Um,
shrimp.
but anyway, so to get back to Vader's question, do one of you guys want to take the next answer?
Yeah, go ahead, X. Go ahead.
Sure. So I don't remember specifically, uh, and that's
Oh.
hard. I do remember. I do remember my gateway drug was Ice, who's in chat, was the person who got me into D&D, and I don't remember how it happened. Aaron, you're gonna have to fill me. You have to remind me which came first. Um, but I know that I I do remember. Oh gosh, now I remember the specifics. Do you guys
Uh-oh.
remember the TV show Community?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
They do the D&D
the
episodes.
the
And
D&D episodes are the best.
I watched those when I was like 13 or 14, and I remember thinking that sounds so fun. I want to be Hector the Well Endowed. I want to play a character. And so
Andre the
Oh.
Giant. Andre the Giant. That's all I'll say.
We did have a character in one of our campaigns named Humongous, so.
but anyway, the point that was the sort of genesis of it, and I thought about that for years and years and years. And then I don't remember if Aaron or I specifically talked about it, or if I brought it up, or if he brought it up. But we never got to play, and then I deployed in 2016, and he gave me the player's handbook to read over. And so I read the player's handbook, and when I got home, we started playing a couple little sessions, and then we played a little bit, and then it stopped. I don't remember what we're all just so busy. But then I remember thinking, well, if I want to keep doing this, I'm gonna have to DM. And I had done little bits here and there, and I decided I'm gonna have to really commit to learning how to do it. And so from there, yeah, that was really it. I mean, it was the need to the fix needed to be I needed the fix somehow.
Uh,
Yeah.
I I don't know if you have chat pulled up, Hex, but I says my mind is like a sieve.
Civ.
Yeah, that's
Sev, sorry.
Civ. His memory is famously poor,
Yeah.
except for certain very unimportant details.
Join the club. Join the club.
uh,
But
so yeah, I guess
on
that
the
Yeah.
leaves
counter
one
of that,
person
I
there.
can memory every detail from an entire session. So I have the short term memory on lock, but it just disappears after a while.
I can definitely say for me it was looking back, and only with this perspective do I realize it was like lifelong, but with a very important catalyst, and I'll get to that. But it started playing old RPG games, Baldur's Gate, Winter
Hmm.
Nights, Icewind Dale, yada yada. And back then I was just like, I was stupid unga bunga kid bashing the keyboard trying to make things work, and just whatever. I'm here to. I didn't understand that it was all based around a D20 and stuff like that, and there's a pretty popular kind of cult following, kind of important video game out there called Star Wars: Knights of the Republic 1 and 2.
So good.
I don't know if any
So
of you guys
good.
have played that,
I don't
but
know what
I
you're talking
didn't
about.
recognize the same way that I just described it, that it was D20 based. It's all based around a
Hmm.
D20. You do attack rolls. There's DCs. I didn't understand any of that crap, by the way, back in the day. I have just real quick went back and played them after like understanding D&D, and I gamified the system so hard my character was OP by the time they were like level 10. It's so easy to break those games. But like that was the genesis and the basis for like understanding rounds and rolls and things like that, and I was 10 just trying to play Star Wars. And trying to play Baldur's Gate. I didn't even know what the heck D&D or Faerun or Baldur's Gate or any of that crap was. Um, but in the more modern times, I had my brother approach me many years ago, back when I was like a sophomore in high school, and he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna play Dungeons and Dragons with a bunch of my friends. You want to join?" I was like, "No, you freaking nerd. No, Dungeons and Dragons, absolutely not." And then about a year and a half, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I can't remember exactly. My friend was like, my good friend, like lifelong friend, was like, "I'm gonna run D&D. I want you to be in it." And I was like, "Okay, I'll make a character. What do you want?" He's like, "Here's what I want for your character," and I gave him my character, and that was the campaign that we played through that I talked about us finishing. And the whole time he was pestering me, like, "When are you gonna DM? When are you gonna DM?" And I don't know why he kept pestering me specifically to be DM. Maybe he thought that I had the capability for it, or the drive and the intrigue to throw in. But he was the catalyst. But throughout my entire life, like this is, and now that I've become a DM, I can see it everywhere. Like Community, like a lot of very popular directors these days, like they all have these bases in D&D. You come to find out when you read like interviews and stuff, it's kind of incredible how universal Dungeons and Dragons is. I mean, Stephen Colbert played Dungeons and Dragons. Like I don't even personally know or really watch or like Stephen Colbert, but like I was never expecting him to play D&D. Like what? Like you got celebrities out here playing D&D, and star directors out there playing D&D, and it's really cool to see in hindsight. But yeah, I mean it is freaking everywhere. It permeated the beginning of my life when I started to like really pay attention to like storytelling and soundtracks and everything else. And now that I've had that catalyst of somebody like egging me on to DM after showing me what D&D could be, which is incredible, what it can be. Uh, Now I just see it freaking everywhere. It's kind of sickening how you see it everywhere.
Yeah.
And it is everywhere. You can't
Mm,
evade it.
we're all hooked now.
Yep.
Yeah,
We're
you like
all
you read about some director or some storyteller or somebody, and they're like, "Yeah, I've been playing DD since I was 15." Duh. And you're like, "What? Would have never expected that. What the heck?"
right.
It's just wild.
Yep. It's a
Totally.
crazy world. But all right. So we'll circle back here to session prep. What do you guys got?
Session prep. Oh boy, is that the topic? Oh
That's
no.
what
Yeah.
we're trying to stay on topic, guys. But it's hard when you're talking
Hmm.
about something you're passionate about.
Oh yeah, real hard. Let me
I
look through my.
So I've got something here that
Mm.
I guess is a little. If you got something, go ahead.
I just have an idea that like when you're prepping a session and you know it's going to be, and this can depend on whether or not you like understand fully where the story is going or where it's been, and like obviously pacing is everything. But let's say you're prepping a session and you say to yourself, you know what, screw this, I want to throw these guys an absolute curveball. What kind of things do you lean into to throw them a curveball? Do you lean into like an NPC, not a surprise dragon, but like a surprise enemy? Like one of the ones that I'm waiting on the wings for is like a declaration of war. Like war has come.
And are you
Congratulations.
talking about in my world because the world's at peace?
Oh, well, okay. I'll because Hex is. I think he's got a wireless headset. I couldn't really tell if he has a wire on it or not. Maybe he
Yeah.
can hear us. Maybe he can't. I'll lean in real quick and just say, in my opinion as a DM, I think I've talked about this before on a DM
There's no
roundtable.
such thing as peace.
If your world is at peace, it is because a choice few individuals are struggling very hard to maintain it,
And
and once that falls apart, you go to war.
right, and that's kind of one of my things about the second campaign that I'm really excited about is the second campaign we're running for the Silver Sparrows shows those people, that organization that works in the shadows to help maintain that peace. It shows that opposite side on why is the world in peace? Well, because this other fucking group's over here making sure some dude with a fucking OP sword doesn't blow up the city, or whatever is happening. Like just giving an
Okay,
example.
we got some really good chat questions, so we
Yeah, no,
need to
I'm going.
hurry the
I
fuck
was
up.
actually going to tie that into what you're saying is how to throw a player a curveball. Animated Ice here has a really good example, and this is something that I like to do. And Ice, I think you'll know that I have done this before for. So let's talk about tactics of player environments. For instance, one thing that I added when you guys were recently in Umberless, and you'll remember this, is while you were there, you guys felt this ever turning sense of dread and the sense of these shadows creeping into your mind. And I threw those insanity
Hmm.
effects at you guys as like an extra layer of environmental terror that kind of it made you feel like, yeah, we can fight here, but the longer we stay here, the more our minds become corrupted. Uh, so it's like things like that. So I guess to when I prep for stuff like that, I guess I look at the surrounding world and what's going on and what's happening in this combat to add. And for me, I guess when I prep that stuff, it comes down to one, where they're at in the world, and two, how do I build my map? Because as both of you guys know and those that have watched my streams, I build all my combat maps, and I place out all the different minis and as much as I can to depict the surroundings as best as possible. I mean, I have this light projector that projects, this lights that kind of gives the mood setting. I have a fog machine, all this different stuff that kind of like tries to set the mood the best I can for the way I'm describing it. And for me, when I do all that, then I think, okay, how does all of this around affect it? For instance, in my recent combat, I didn't get a chance to play on it, but I put these runes in an arena for Victor, and I didn't stream this, but Typex what I'm talking about. Victor and a compatriot went into an arena because he had to
Hmm.
who to show off his magic abilities in order to gain a higher level of access in order to graduate within to the next level within the Magic Academy in my world. Well, I built this arena with these runes, with these rune minis I have, and I put ladders going up the different walls and stuff. I gave him the ability, which he didn't take, which is fine because I put that stuff there for you guys to look. But I gave him the ability to go up and use his environment to his advantage. Like I prepped that environment so that he could gain the high ground. He could do he could do things in that world to run around and hide behind the corners to get cover, to climb the ladder and get out of vision to take high ground so he can peep out, throw a spell, peep back. Those sort of things. Give those
Yep.
environmental factors to give combat an extra level of interactiveness.
Hmm.
I don't know if one of you guys wants to take it. I don't want to just talk the whole time.
I'll tackle this
Yeah,
one, Hex,
Yeah.
if you don't have anything immediately.
go ahead.
Uh, Combat environments, and this kind of leans into Scary Pops' question a little bit. I'm gonna evade it, but it's a lead into the next one. Combat environments, in my opinion, when you're running D&D, are the flair that keeps combat fresh. D&D combat can take place on a white mat, on a grid with 5 foot squares, and everybody just kind of runs at each other and gets within 5 feet and starts hitting each other. That's perfectly fine. And if that's your flair, if that's your version, your flavor of D&D, fine with me. Knock yourself out.
More power to you.
I'm a huge yeah, more power to you. Seriously, knock yourself out, have fun. I'm a huge fan of height differences, verticality. I think no enemy ambushes you on a street or on a road or on a path to another city without using the environment to their advantage. Nobody plans an ambush without some sort of advantage. There's
Hmm.
literally no reason to just like walk up and be like, "Hey, you're my enemy. Let's go fight each other." So like again, it all depends on what you're available and capable of doing. If you don't have the funds to get like combat risers and terrain and all this stuff, understandable. Run your
I
game.
used my daughter's wooden blocks.
You're still gonna have a
Yeah.
great time. Yeah, use toys and stuff. Like use whatever you can. If you can't use anything and you're running like 2D encounters, fine. Like that is not my criticism. Um, I can speak to Animal Ice or sorry, Animate Ice is examples. High wind environments pushing players. I have used this wrongly, in my opinion, twice, and correctly very well in one as a lead up to a combat. It didn't really affect the combat. I'll give very short descriptions. Uh, there was a time in my campaign when the enemies needed to charge what was essentially a prepared goblin stronghold, and in front of it was basically a mud punji stick pit. That was really hard to say, which is like a spike trap essentially. Um, Turns out my druid turned into an elk. The barbarian hopped on and they sprinted across it, and they rolled really well. And bada bing, bada boom, the goblin's trap was no more, which is fine. Like that's fine. I misused it in the sense that it couldn't be triggered. Um, I really kind of, in my opinion, learned a big lesson. I won't say messed up, but I do feel a bit of a failure. I had an environment in that swamp that I've talked about a couple times, the hard crossing into the second act of the campaign, where the players experience a crossover between the material plane and the Feywild, and it affected them and lulled them to sleep, and I decided to assign this to every round they needed to make a saving throw or they lose their round. And they were ambushed by displacer beasts, which are like perfect hunters in this environment. They survived, which is great for me because I didn't accidentally kill my party. I learned a big lesson in like environments and how quickly dice can dogpile. The instance where I think I used it incredibly was when they were returning from a certain city, which is a kind of a journey because it's a secluded area, and throughout which a NPC battered them with control weather. They changed it from a blizzard to a rainstorm back to a blizzard over and over, and they eventually said, "Well, we can't, cart during this." They pulled the cart to the side. The wizard was wildly trying to get up magic circle or not magic circle,
Tiny hut.
tiny hut. Uh, they were all scrambling to get the horses warmed, and it was this great environmental threat that wasn't even combat. It was a mad scramble to save what they had, and I thought it was. I watched them react to a situation I had no idea how they were going to do. I just threw it at them, and they reacted amazingly. And then once the control weather was over, it was hard. It was difficult terrain to move through, and it was, in my opinion, a pretty good combat. Environment is critical when considering combat encounters. If you have the capabilities to, if you don't, or you just want to run 2D maps, knock yourself out.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
I really think it brings that dynamicacy and memorability that I personally love.
And just
Um,
so we're being clear and we're touching on this, all of us as DMs have nothing against those of you that use those plain
oh
maps.
no,
If you draw them out,
no,
more power to you. Or if you strictly use theater of mind, that is your bread and butter, and that's what you like to do. That's cool
the
because
very
we've done those things too. We've used plain maps. We've used theater of mind.
Mhm.
And my first instance coming to mind where I think I did I'm so happy with how it turned out. The session as a whole, I was still iffy about, but the way I prepped the combat or the environment for my chase scene in my last session, I felt amazing about. I thought that it went over amazingly on my last episode of Friday Night Dice, and just prepping the environment and the surroundings and
yeah, that
how
chase scene was great.
and like
That was the
how.
one for. Sorry.
No, go. Uh, but yeah, just like like how I prepped the environment. Like, okay, they're going down a path into a very heavily forested area and into a grove. What sort of things are they going to find here? Of course, and the enemy's trying to slow them down because they are rushing to get to this point. Well, they're going to have people stationed on the side to ambush them as they're coming down their own that are hiding in the brush. They're going to have traps of like mud and shit in the road where they've set out to try and slow down the cart. They're gonna have trees and branches pushed into the road to try and slow them down, and things like that I kind of prepped for the environment on the way there that I thought went over really well for my for it, and I call it a chase scene, but it's kind of like not a chase
No,
scene because the
I'll
party's
name.
running.
I'll name him. I spoke with Dustin about that, and that is the pinnacle, in my opinion, for how a chase scene should be handled in D&D. And I say that with absolutely no reservation, and I'm not trying to curry favor here. I'm serious. Like, I've thought about how to run chase scenes, and I see a lot of the elements that you put in there, and those were elements that I was trying to be sure that I keep in mind when I run a chase scene. And your chase scene that you ran in that session was, quite frankly, in my personal opinion, as not a professional DM, impeccable. That was amazing.
Well,
The
I do
tension,
appreciate
everything
that.
was there. No, everything was there. It had the whole kit and caboodle. That was great. Sorry, Hex. Like, we've gone off on a whole fucking
Yeah,
little.
sorry.
That chase scene was. Yep, here he is in fucking chat. Scary Pops. He likes that chase scene because guess what? That chase scene was amazing.
And
Well
and that
handled.
and
Well
that
done.
and that just boils back down to animated ice's question is
Yeah,
I guess I spent
environment,
the
man.
as I spent the time to prep that environment and how it would affect that sort of combat.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
I guess boil down what you and I said. No predator is going to approach prey, be it an ambush or whatever. You find them in their lair, like, that's different. No predator is going to approach prey without an advantage.
right.
Usually that's geographical in
So
some small form.
we'll let you
Sorry, Hex.
have your bit now, Hex. We kind of went off there for a little bit.
Sorry.
No, this is great. I had my chips and I've been enjoying them.
They look
Um,
tasty.
Yeah, they're very good. I was going to say that my strength as a DM is more in characters and plots and things like that, and compelling combat is something I've always kind of struggled with. It's where I have to put more effort than anything. And so I'm just listening to what you guys have to say. I'm trying to remember what you guys are pointing out. Matt, you did that chase, that sort of when we chased the white, the shade.
Yes.
And I took note of that. And then the pressure you put on us with the hourglass.
Right. Yeah,
In the
I
house.
force you guys to like you see that as soon as and I will tell this to all DMs and I'm not saying it's a requirement. If you don't own an hourglass, go get one because the second you flip that hourglass and your party sees it,
Oh, yeah.
the sense of dread instantly washes over them. They're like, we got to figure this out now.
Yep.
You don't even.
Yeah,
I think
it
I'm
becomes
gonna
full
get
action.
one, and at this point, I'm gonna get one and not tell them
Oh
what it's
yeah,
for.
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Just use it for unrelated
Yeah, just whip it
things
out.
because
Just
yeah,
literally whip it out.
what I felt when you flipped the hourglass, it wasn't something I'd seen before. I know it happens, but I hadn't felt it before, and I was like, ah, man, this is a powerful thing that you've done.
Yeah,
And so,
and
but I'm still. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm really sad because my hourglass broke and I have to get a new one.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Yeah, sad
No,
day.
I mean, Hex, I will say, I mean, if you don't feel like you have anything particularly to throw in, like, that's okay, because
Well,
and that's what we're
I
here
think-
for is to get
what
everyone's
I'll
different
say
perspective.
what I'll say definitely is, in my opinion, combat in D&D is one of the most mundane parts of D&D.
I agree.
And I say that as a DM who runs, and
Yeah.
running one monster versus 6 or 5 adventurers is really kind of not illustrious. And that's why I lean so heavily. Animate Ice, I know, probably didn't ask the question on the basis of stoking our individual fires, but like I don't plan combat encounters around the monster. Usually, I usually plan the environment and throw the monster into it, or modify the environment around the monster that I've chosen to throw into it. It's the only way to spice combat up. Because combat otherwise is pretty boring.
And
so
there.
I will.
Go ahead.
I will throw in my I guess I gave a very vague answer, but I do have some points that I use.
Yeah,
Um,
go ahead.
and that is, if it's a serious combat, I always want more than one objective. If it's a boss fight, I want more than one objective. I never want them fighting one thing. I want them fighting themselves as well. I want decisions to have to be made because there's never. I'll give you the example of the fight I designed that actually I talked to you about, Matt.
Hmm.
So there was this massive cannon that was prepared to be leveled at the city, and it was sort of like a war machine, right? Where it had to be positioned and prepared and fired. And so, as they were approaching the cannon, which had this massive war camp around it, most of the forces are out front fighting the battle, and they're approaching from the back. They realize that this cannon is getting ready to fire. So the whole time I've given them they're battling time as well. They've got
Hmm.
obstacles in the way. They've got they have to make the decision: do I fight this guy? Do I go free that guy? When I get up there, how do I focus my attention? Do I just fight the boss that's on top of it, or do I focus on disabling the cannon? And so as a rule of thumb, if it's a serious big combat, I want one distraction, if not two or three things
Right.
pulling them in a different direction.
That's
So,
a really good point to make, and one thing that I'm gonna actually take note of to do better of, and I think I've secretly accidentally done this to my players, and when you're saying that, like the distraction, everything that comes to mind is, but my party's been my main campaign's party's been plagued by this woman that they met in campaign, and then for session one that drove them together. Basically, she caused the first thing that drove them together, and now we're in session 16 and they're still being plagued by this woman. They just can't seem to pin her down and get rid of her. Well,
She's the worst.
while while they're fighting her, she erects this statue out of the ground, and instantly my player that she like raises out of the ground. Instantly my players are like, this statue's an enemy, and they all just start throwing spells and attacks at it. And in all reality, it was nothing but a statue. and,
mhm,
and I think I've accidentally done that, but that's a good point you make, because giving them something else to focus on, and,
mhm.
and the only other instance I can think of where I think I've done a decent job of maybe giving them something else to think about is in that same instance. She was also she appeared as if she was calling for backup. She kept signaling and looking off in the distance, and
Yep.
I told them that they could hear the beating of thunderous, like beating of wings coming from the distance, and like they heard this loud roar, and I just like gave them those small blips instances, and eventually the combat ended 2 rounds, so literally seconds before this thing arrived, and they got off into the forest and hid, and then this massive dragon came down and landed, and just uses breath attack to unleash havoc upon the whole area. But I do really like what you
So
get, what you say in there, Hex, and I think I'm actually gonna take note of that personally, and try to do that better.
Yeah, I've got a ton of stuff from us talking that I'm gonna keep and use in the future.
oh,
Right.
geez, this has been a treasure trove.
Mhm.
I do want to touch real quick and say session prep, maybe depending on things.
Oh, we're
I
talking about freshman prep.
well, yeah, apparently that's a topic. Oh boy, I've been doing so good.
I think we did
Yeah,
okay.
but session prep wise, I don't know if this really falls in session prep. This kind of falls back into our discussion about encounter design and or just like villains. Uh, don't put it beyond yourself, in my opinion, as a DM, to whether or not you prep what is said. And I'm drawing on an old conversation I had with a DM who isn't here, obviously. And he many sessions later told me like I was planning this great thing for my players, and the villain was gonna monologue for a bit, but they didn't monologue. They didn't get a chance to monologue because they started attacking the villain. Duh. I mean,
Combat's
yeah, that
ensued.
happens.
Yeah.
And it feels kind of cheap, and every DM has their own different ruling about how it works. But there is certain value in the basic storytelling element of like a villain taunting you because they think they're winning, yet they're secretly revealing their plot, and then all of a sudden the tables turn and they're defeated. And so like if your villain's gonna monologue and your players don't let him do that, this is not really session prep, I guess. This is more modularity. Like feel free to just throw that in as a free action every time they cut one of your players across the chest with their fucking huge ass sword.
Yeah, definitely.
Because like I don't know, I find the idea of like mid combat dialogue really interesting. I also find this is kind of jumping even further, but like a boss character with legendary action, like feel free to give them a legendary like leap action where they can leap up to. This is because I love verticality. They can leap up to like a new ledge and for a round just stand up there and talk. And they have the health points or anything else to do. Like get your as a DM, you each encounter is a part of the story. Unless it's like hill giants
That's a very
ambushing
good
your
point.
cart.
Yeah.
Like yeah, your villain should be cutting you and you think about 6 seconds and like, yeah, okay, 6 seconds, that's fine. But like they're also fending off like 6 people sometimes. So like he's parrying you and taunting you all at the same time. These villains are masters of their craft. And it takes a group of you to take them down. Like let them speak if they have to.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because I remember a conversation with a DM who felt like the party didn't let the villain speak and monologue, and then they was kind of lost on like plot points. Throw that in combat. It only
that's
makes
great.
them more mad at the villain.
That's a great point. Is that you lose those plot points, and I love the shit that gets lost. I love it when they cut something off. They
Yeah,
cut themselves
sometimes,
off
yeah.
at the knee.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite things.
Sorry if anybody's watching, but you guys killed like the guy who was a villain, and well, he'll be back.
Yeah.
Yeah, we killed an important person in our campaign, and
Yeah,
what
no
did we call it? We chose violence was the meme.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we-
that peace
we-
was never an option.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
sometimes if they, I love natural consequences.
Yep.
I love
Yeah.
the world exists as it is, and the way you interact with it is exactly what you get from it. So if you kill that guy, the information he had, for me, the purity of it is that information could be completely lost. And
Yeah,
that's
I remember the party. Sorry, the party that I was running for, they killed like one of the genesis of the main conflict of that starting tutorial area, and I was like, well, all right, here's a letter that he wrote in his desk.
Yeah.
You'll see him later. You'd think he's dead, but he's not. Sorry if anybody's watching. He ain't dead.
The first thing that comes to mind about consequences and prepping and maybe prepping for some of those consequences sort of thing that you talk about, Hex, it reminds me of our session where you guys encountered the visage of that man made of blood, and then you guys killed him,
Ugh.
and you found the blood aether gem. And when you guys found that blood aether gem on the table, you guys found strapped, which he was experimenting on. This blood golem was experimenting on. You found a vampire, and through discussion and talking to this vampire, Tybex was just like, even though this vampire seemed like he had information to give, Tybex was just like, nah, vampires are evil. Warhammer, smash, and you just outright killed him, and for without spoiling anything for you because none of that stuff came up yet. That choice will come with consequences,
Mhm.
and that's a really good point.
And that's informed by who, like Tybex. At that point, that was our first or second session.
The second session, yeah.
Second session, and at that point, who Tybex was very black and white.
Right,
Tybex,
exactly.
Tybex is an anxious person. That's ironic that I said black and white, but
I know.
Tybex is an anxious person when there's not a clear direction, and so whenever possible, he tries to make it as clear as possible, and that leads him to make rush decisions
Hmm.
at
Yeah.
times. And so there was no question of this was an evil thing and he's doing evil things, and that gave me a chance. That character moment is going to lead to more character moments in the future
Right.
as Tybex deals with the consequences of what he did.
Yeah, and that's for me, I guess for me, I never prepped. Like, I guess just because I want to circle back and keep everything within our same topic here, I never prepped for you guys to kill him. But there's
always
but there's always, for me, at least whenever I'm making session preps, I never prepare for you guys to do certain things. I'm always like, yeah, they're not gonna do this. No way they do this. But then I always have that blip right under my note where I'm like, if they do this, what's the consequence? And I have that prepared in my notes. So I guess just because we're staying on topic here, and that's kind of what I was trying to get at, is you have those key moments, and maybe if you have like, you might have a key NPC that's supposed to help your party or give your party information they need, but what's the consequence if they kill that NPC, or if they completely ignore them? Like, fleshing out that consequence ahead of time will save you a lot of trouble and work later on.
That is one thing I will. Where you talk about the plot points,
Yeah.
knowing how the plot points diverge is important. That's
Yeah.
an important thing to know. You don't need to know exactly when or where it's going to split, but having a vague idea of where it could go if these actions happen, that's important.
As a DM, you can easily sell that all of the dots were connected in the first place.
That's very true.
We have a very good question in chat, I think.
What do you say?
As a DM, do you...
Go ahead.
What?
Go ahead.
As a DM, do you keep a folio of leveled characters / monsters for combat if players stray from the regular story? Or set random encounters and then have a small percentage of always happening? A roving herd of animals defending their territory, wandering serial killers, Charles Manson style, guardians of a forest, minor deity in immortal form, Bob the Cannibal. I'll take this one up
Bob
front.
the Cannibal.
Yeah, Bob the Cannibal.
I think you mean Shia LaBeouf the Cannibal.
Shia LaBeouf the Cannibal. I'll take this one up front and say that yes. Generally, I keep on hand a number of encounters, and this kind of, I know you were watching another VOD thinking you were watching us live. Sorry, had to do it.
Don't ever stop reminding him.
But also go back and watch that VOD.
Yeah, I mean, do whatever you want. Yeah, watch the VOD, whatever VOD it was, enjoy. Jeez, man, I just had a blank. I, as part of session prep, if I'm ever, like, blank on ideas, I just go out and look for... I have a list of, like, pre-prepared interesting monsters, quote-unquote, that I, like, throw together into a big old list, and there are at about the challenge rating, or I'll modify them, I don't care, to fit the party, and if they ever got off my path, my choices are either end the session early or stall with a combat. Like, yeah, you hate to say it, but like that's a DM's trick. Sometimes they get way off your scene, and either you're improving or you're stalling with the combat. And I try to keep it reasonable. I've never had to do something unreasonable yet. I'd probably just improv if it was quote unquote unreasonable. But yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely, yes.
So I guess I'll
keep a list of encounters. I'll take
the next bullet point here on how I handle it. So if I don't have a combat prepped, or I think if I know the party's the surrounding area of the party and they could possibly go a different direction, I have a set number, or I go through before the session during my session prep, and I find, okay, what minis do I have that could represent monsters or be monsters in the surrounding area. For instance, like if my party's trekking through a forest, well, look, I have a forest spirit mini. Maybe they go off the tangent path and I drop this forest spirit mini on them because they are trampling across her forest, killing off her plants and disturbing her animals, and now they've pissed her off. And some of those things like that, where it's just like it's a random encounter. But then you can build off of that, like, okay, who's this forest spirit? And like you don't even have to do it in your session prep, because you can make that combat last and take time, and then afterwards you go back and you flesh out. You're like, okay, who's this forest spirit? Why is she here? Why exactly is she pissed at them? And you can really, some of those random encounters can turn into.
If your players latch on, you can make it a whole new thing.
Yeah, and that's right. You turn it into like a whole different subplot you can, and the best thing is whenever you somehow make it seem like you tied it back into the main plot, and then your party's like, you're a fucking genius. But that's kind of my thing. For me and my session prep for random encounters, I like to look at my minis and the surrounding area and what kind of things would be found there throughout my collection, and then build the encounter off of that.
Kind of a different approach. I like it. Hex, sorry.
This is another thing where I'm very economical about it. I might have one or two random encounters. For example, I stole the Nine Strangers encounter from Critical Role, which was one of my favorite encounters. You can trade your years of your life for an answer to a question, right? You stand in the plinth, and if you can ask any question, and you
Oh,
will receive an answer, but it's going to cost you years of your life. So that was an interesting one that I wanted on my sort of general table, and then there were other area specific ones that I wanted as a part of it, and then everything besides that I took from Tasha's. Tasha's Cauldron of Everything
oh,
has this
Tasha's
wonderful.
so great.
The
It's a
encounter list
good
is
content.
amazing. That will save you 100%, 100 million years on random
So good.
encounters, and
So
then
good.
you just make them roll it. And the first thing I did was I said roll a d4, or excuse me, roll a d10. On a 1 or a 2, you're rolling one of my events. On everything else, you're rolling on the random encounter. And then make them roll the human
Oh,
number.
that's so smart.
That's actually a
And
good idea.
that's just my way of mixing them in, sort of keeping the ratio
Hmm.
That is so
correct
smart.
without having to fill a huge list. And then, like one time, I said, I'd let them take the dangerous road or the less dangerous road, and I didn't have to do that much work because all I did was I made them roll 2 encounters at the same time, um, ahead of time. They had 2 days, and each day they had to roll 2 encounters and the 2 counters more or less happened simultaneously. The first day they got
Hmm.
lucky, and it was just a giant in the hut, and the second day they got attacked by a chimera and 4 cyclops at the same time. And so
Jesus Christ.
that's what, and I didn't. It was the word that was what the dice decreed. That was what the world. That's what
Eh,
happened in the world, and so that's what they saw.
and you and I have had that conversation. You say the dice decreed hex, and I'm one of those people, and some people would
But the
disagree.
dice
But
don't always decree.
some
Sometimes the
people,
dice lie.
yeah, yeah. And you and I have had this conversation though. Is sometimes in certain situations, and this is a whole different topic that we won't get too into, but I see the dices as my world's version of fate, and
Mm.
sometimes I refuse to fudge those dice rolls, even if I've prepped for something else to happen and the dice doesn't fall my way, because I want the world to feel real, I guess. But and I don't want to dive too far into this because we do have another question that I saw was a good one. Uh,
Yeah, there's a very good one waiting in the wings.
how do you prep for player downtime slash specific character interactions that you want to see happen? So I'll go right off the bat for this one because I have a couple instances that I think are very easy. Were very easy for me to set up and how I prep for them. So the first one that comes to mind is introducing the person who's asking's character into my current campaign. So Scary Pops plays Hallen in my current campaign, and how I prepped for his specific character interaction with my party was one, the party was kind of in a lull where they were kind of having downtime and they needed work. Well, one, Holland's got work. Two, Holland has ties to someone in the party because they're from the same hometown and they could instantly click together and have that conversation. So that would instantly tie him into the party because he's going to relate to someone there and they're going to have good convers and they're going to like have a conversation about that. And I guess the way I prepped for that wasn't really me prepping for it in a sense, but it just happened to be coincidence that both came from the same place. But then the way I did it is I prepped that, oh, each of you notice, your garb of clothing and similar styles of way of mannerisms of the way they talk, the way they walk, the way they act. You guys notice these things about each other, and that almost from there takes it out of my hands and puts it into the player's hands where I don't have to prep anything else and I just let the players work it out between them. They're going to take it from there and have their RP moments and have their moments there. And that's one of those things that, at least for me, and I'm sure you guys can relate too, us DMs live for those moments when your players just kind of take over and have their moments amongst each other. Uh,
Yeah, my favorite time is
Absolutely.
is when I spend 40 minutes not talking
yeah.
Absolutely.
because it's all
Uh,
players.
so my other point to get to your other point here, Holland, is how do I prep for player downtime? So I try the short answer is to prep for player downtime. I try to make sure I have each of my players. If I'm gonna give them downtime, I try to make sure each of them have something that I know they're gonna want to do during that downtime, so they aren't just like, yeah, I sit around for 6 days doing nothing. So I try to prep when I know they're gonna have downtime, waiting for something to happen. I try to prep leading up to that instance things for them, or little like blips of things that they could be doing in that downtime to further the development of their character. Which I hope it makes sense and answers what you're asking.
I
No,
can offer an example of what not to do.
Okay.
Oh, we love to hear those. Yes.
So, I am in the middle of the worst downtime nightmare that you can possibly imagine,
Well,
which is I gave my characters more or less a blank check. I did not give them a finite amount of time. I said, "You tell me what you want to do," because they had so many diverging things that they all wanted to accomplish that, and I didn't want to just say, "Okay, now you guys are going to Waterdeep to check in on this thing. Now you guys are going to Ash Willow to check on this thing. Now you're going back to Vasa for this thing. Now to Silverymoon, so on and so forth." So I said, "You guys can go do your things, engage in a bit of the world." But I didn't want to limit them, so I said, take as much time as you want. And now 3 weeks later, because we play more or less monthly, 3 weeks later, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around the consequences of all the just random shit they did. Um, Now, in addition to this, as part of their downtime, I love kingdom management elements, and I wanted to add a kingdom management module for them, and they were interested. And so they've long had access to this mithril mine that they discovered, and so they wanted to get into it. And as we were getting into it, as part of their downtime, we did like a little mini session, and I just didn't understand the string of things that this would create, the string of questions that couldn't be answered without doing more mini sessions. And so, the blank check is not a good idea. The blank check for everybody to just go pursue their own ends for a while creates so much work as a DM. I would say keep it finite and let them do as much as they want within a set amount of time, and do not make it too long. I let them make it far too long. 6 months of downtime, by the way, uh,
Jeez.
for their characters. Yeah, and so that was what they wanted. That's what they wanted to accomplish, and I
Man.
told them they'd do it, and I held true to my word. It was an absolute mistake in retrospect, and
This
so
Wow.
that is what not to do.
this reminds me of something, and I know you guys. We have some of us have we play with similar people, and we played with a lot of us play with people in different groups together, and we know our friends. My brother has a campaign which I'm not a part of, but he's told me many times where his DM in this game, who is Nil in my stream campaign. Joel is his DM in that game. Well, Joel, and you talk about the things not to do, and not to dog on Joel, but Joel gave them an extended amount of downtime. So what did my brother's character didn't have anything he wanted to do. So what did my brother say he wanted to do? He said, "I want to build a moat around the city and use my kid decanter of endless water to fill it." And he just like literally uprooted this city and built a moat around it in Noel's or I mean in Joel's campaign. And I always think to myself, and I'm like, I would never allow that to happen. And if I did, how would I rectify it? And I don't want to say I would never allow it to happen. If they took the time, like they say they spend, if you have 3 days of downtime, he's like, I go and work on my moat. But I would never give them enough time to do it in one sitting, I guess. So you talk about those things not to do, and I guess just to touch on your point is to not give too much downtime.
Well, make it specific. It's like make it specific. Make it don't. It's you can never not disallow somebody to do something,
And
right? I
yeah,
mean that's the best part of D&D is
yeah,
doing what you want, but find a natural way to keep it tight is to make it shorter.
yeah,
Um,
and basically
or
don't
force
make.
them to come up with the specific things that they
I
want to
guess
accomplish ahead of time.
I guess my point is I would rather I want them to feel like they worked for it rather than just give them the instant gratification of like, yeah, there's a moat there now.
Hmm.
Six months in game have passed, and all these people have watched without anything happening apparently as you dug a moat.
Hmm. I do really love downtime though because it allows you to do things that you can't normally do.
Right.
My characters wanted to like when do characters have time to craft items? It's the most neglected system in D&D, but it's so great
Yeah.
to be able,
Yeah.
and downtime is wonderful for that.
Hmm.
My character Uggs had returned a manual of dwarven smithing to a dwarven smith, and so in exchange he was going to learn the secrets of dwarven smithing by crafting an item with this master smith. He was going to learn this thing, and so, but when is he going to have a month to craft this beautiful set of armor and learn along the way,
Hmm.
except for during downtime. And so that's the real benefit of doing like regular downtime for short periods of time is fantastic because it gives you the chance to fit in those little moments that you can't do otherwise.
Yeah, yeah, and I definitely agree with you. And giving your characters the downtime, and even if it's short blips of downtime, kind of like just to touch on because with you, Aiden, like I did with you, is with Kelric, you're like for the foreseeable future, just assume, don't even ask that in Kelric's downtime, he is working on creating his spell. And I'm like, perfect. I was like, I don't even have to
Yeah,
prep
just
for.
assume I am.
I was like, I don't even have to prep for what he's doing, but I do have to prep for what the rest of my players are doing in their
I am.
downtime. But
I was desperately trying to create that spell. I fucking needed that spell. Needed it.
but but it gave me
Spell
the
is
sense
required.
of okay, I know this party needs some sort of downtime, so I need to supply it somewhere, and that kind of comes back to what you're talking about, Hex, is those small blips of downtime that allow your characters to do some of those things that kind of get brushed over in D&D, like creating spells and creating magic items and custom weapons, because in reality, when it boils down to, somebody created those spells. Somebody took the time to do that. Why can't you do that? Why can't a player character do the exact same thing? Just because it's not a written rule, why can't a player character go and do it just because it's not created by, Wizards of the Coast?
Absolutely. Ice brings up a good point that you shouldn't always let your characters know how many sessions it's going to take to finish something, and that brings up
Yeah,
something I'm
yeah,
doing with one of my
definitely.
characters, which he's got a weapon, he's got a sentient weapon, but he doesn't know that he's forming a connection with it every time he sits with it. I tell him, yeah, it gibbers in your mind a little bit, and he doesn't know that that's happening in the background. That's exciting.
Yeah. Did you have anything to touch on here, Aiden? I know me and Hex kind of went off there for a minute.
No, it's okay. The question was, do you prep for player downtime / specific character interactions?
Yes.
Character downtime. I keep them. I would if I ever did, which I haven't yet. If I did, I would be very careful to keep their downtime limited because of some impending action coming up, whether it be a requirement to be somewhere else or a chance lost in some other town. The possibilities are endless. I'm going to brush over this quick because I know we got a bunch of questions. Specific character interactions you want to see happen. Usually, if I have a specific character interaction, backstory NPC or not, that I need to know what they're going to be interacting, or like that I know is going to be interacted with in the next session, those are the characters that I live in. Those are the characters that a DM lives in. Like I am my prime quote unquote magic shop owner. That's me in D&D. Like I am my prime arcanist, my prime mage. I am my prime druid who's stuck in the swamp. Like that's me. Those are my characters. That I know them back to front. Those are my haves, not the have-nots. To draw it back to what I talked about earlier. Like those characters are me. And yeah, those are characters that I didn't know existed up until a couple years ago, but over the course of time I've injected in my world and they are me. I need no question, no prep to become those characters. Those are
Yeah.
my characters.
Yeah, definitely.
Specific character interactions that I know are going to happen or that I suspect are going to happen, or even if they happen off the cuff. Those are me. I can't shake that person
Right.
because that is the more than my world. That is my world. The people in it.
Yeah.
That's you won't play a D&D game for the world. You get attached to certain characters and I have to be them.
Yeah. And to circle back here, it looks like we misread Animated Ice's topic here.
No?
He said, I would always let the player know what is required to accomplish and how many sessions it comes to accomplish. So here's my reasoning why I disagree. I'm not going to say you're wrong, but here's my reasoning why I disagree, and it circles back to creating either a magic item and kind of what you touched on Hex in like learning the skill of creating something and and this kind of circles back to why it took Kelric and why Aiden berated me for so long on how much farther his spell had came along. What it boiled down to was he kept asking how much longer was left, and I was like, what it boils down to is keeping player knowledge and character knowledge separate, and by doing, and I didn't want to, and I know Aiden's good at doing this, not to say that he isn't, but I didn't want to tell him how many sessions or how long he had left, because then he knew how close it was, and then he knew, he's like, okay, I get this next session. So for me, I decided I wasn't going to tell him how close he was, because I had a set timeline, because creating a spell is no simple matter. It requires
Sure,
a
yeah.
lot. It requires a lot of practice, a lot of trial and error, a lot of supplies. There's a lot that goes into creating your own spell that actually works 100% of the time that you cast it. Uh, and my reasoning why, to circle back to my point, for reasoning not giving that information, is because when you finally tell them that they have it, they're like, it's like that. It's like, for me, it's euphoria. Like when I'm waiting for someone, and when I'm waiting for something, and I know I've been working really hard on it, and I never know when it's gonna be finished, and then it's finally finished, and I have it. That's a fucking amazing feeling. And it's like, I've worked so hard for this, and now I finally have it. It's such a good feeling. So for me, when it's something along those lines of, if my character, if they gave me a backstory, so I'll give you kind of like what, if I how I would do it, Ice. If someone gave me a backstory where their character is a blacksmith, and they're telling me that they want to, or a blacksmith apprentice of some sort, and they've worked for years with a master, and they're training to become a master, but they've decided to go out adventuring, looking for rare metals, or something, in order to create a master weapon to call their magnus opum, their best craft, and that's their reasoning for adventuring. Well, someone who has that craft and has that knowledge is going to know, like, okay, as soon as they start creating that item, they're like, this is what I'm going to need, this is what I have to do, this is how long it's probably going to take me, roughly. And I could tell them, it's probably going to take you roughly, maybe a week to create this weapon. So maybe that's going to take you 2 to 3 sessions of you and your downtime coming back and working on this. So I guess that's the two different sides of that coin there, on when I would tell them and when I wouldn't tell them.
I generally choose to give them an idea of progress. Um, Obviously, as a DM, you got to be careful about curating. If you show them that it's very easy to craft something new, they'll be crafting new things every time they're on a cart, moving from place to place. If travel is a thing that you do in your game, um, you got to be kind of careful about that. But I personally prescribe the idea of, like, it also depends on what tools you have within the group. This is very off of Friday Night Dice, specifically in Kelric's spell. But when time is required, and you give a quantity of time to anyone, it depends on who or anyone in the party can help. Like, my party, for example, has a druid, wizards in it. They wanted to craft a cloak of barkskin, and I gave them a shopkeep gave them cloaks with a canvas laid, quote unquote canvas. I consider that to be like an enchantment canvas, and then from there, the druid worked with the two wizards to implement the spell into the canvas. It takes time, it takes casting, it takes arcana rolls to lay that into the threads and make it a permeance of that spell. So if you're trying to, like, make an item or make a spell, it just depends on your expertise and how good you are at it. And you really have to, like, sorry, I'm jumping way off topic here, but, like, there's a reason why it's called Tasha's Hideous Laughter, or Melf's Acid Arrow, or Mordenkainen's Mansion. Not Mordenkainen. Shit, that's... Did I get that wrong? Who cares? There's a reason why certain spells are named after, like, great wizards in Faerun. It's because it's very hard to craft a spell. It's very, very hard to make a repeatable, arcane manipulation where you draw sigils, you say something verbally with a somatic component and everything, and you literally make reality be as you want. Fireball is verbal and somatic components making fire where there was none, with a motive energy that you throw. Like, absurd. truly absurd. The idea of like casting Fireball, or Magnificent Mansion, or Melf's Acid Arrow, or anything else. So creating a new spell is an arduous process, and I don't hate Matt for how long it took, but yeah, me as an as a wizard, I was intensely curious how much longer I'd have to wait.
And I will say that I did drop hints, and I was like, and I told him because the spell he was trying to do, there was ways that spell, similar ways that spell had been already been done. So the way that I gave him hints,
Mhm.
and the way that I knew, and I made his character roll to make sure he would understand this in game. But basically I was like, if you find research on these other spells and do more research upon it, it's going to, take your research leaps and bounds ahead of time, because then you're building off of someone else's already made up idea, and that kind of and that sort of thing. And that's how you can, and just because we're talking about prep, that's how you can prep for stuff like that when people bring you something like this. If someone comes with you with a custom spell or a custom item, look at how it's already been done, and then have their character, if it's the right setting, roll to see if they understand that or know that, so that they can go research that to further along their process.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Yeah.
Hex, do you got anything else?
Not on that specific subject. I sort of more or less said my piece.
Yeah, okay.
In terms of crafting things like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll give definite things. Like if there's an expert, he knows how long it takes him to make a sword.
Right, yeah, and
But
that's what I was getting at too.
If you're connecting with a sentient weapon, who the fuck knows?
Mhm.
And so there's room
Yeah.
for it's a sliding scale.
Yep.
Yeah,
And-
definitely.
and bending reality through the use of arcane means, whether you're a bard or wizard, like there is no innate or granted ability like a cleric or anyone else's or a sorcerer is given. There's no blood magic involved in that. You're a regular human being who's done their research. You bend
Yeah.
reality every day. Congratulations.
So either of you guys got anything else that we'll end on? We'll do one more thing and we'll kind of end on that for tonight.
Oh boy.
Don't try and do everything.
Don't. Yeah, that's very
Don't
true.
try and do everything. Not all at once. It
Yeah.
takes time. It
Yeah,
takes,
definitely.
It takes a lot of practice, and it takes doing something horribly to figure out how to do it best.
Yeah, if you take anything away from tonight, and for those that watch on YouTube afterwards, and those that go back and watch the VOD later, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't beat yourself up if your session didn't go exactly the way you planned. Use it as a learning experience. Like for a quick example, my last session, like I said, I prepped very, very much for that chase scene in my last session, and looking back, I put too much prep into the chase scene and not enough prep into the back half of the session, and that really showed, because when we got to the combat and the combat started, I was not as prepared as I should have been, and it definitely showed. And I even apologized for it on stream, and I apologized to my players after stream. And it's just something. It's like, I'm not gonna beat myself up over about it. And looking back, I hate that it happened and that I did that, but I'm not going to be upset about it. I'm just going to take it as a learning experience and be like, okay, I need to be. I had my bullet point for what I wanted to do for what I wanted to happen during the stream for like what was supposed to be the shining moment, the fun part of the stream at the beginning, the fun part of the session, I should say, at the beginning. And then there was the back half that got more into the story, the combat and how that combat was supposed to go. And I should have spent more time prepping for the whole session instead of focusing on one point.
Well, I will say, as a player in your game, that chase sequence was incredible. And yeah, I mean, I can see the cracks in the other combat, and that's fine. I will throw in as well. Do not be afraid to make mistakes, because, as I described earlier, I did that cross between like the Feywild and Material Plane with Displacer Beasts and the effect of like sleeping for a round. And it turned out horrendously from a game design standpoint, from a encounter design standpoint. Like, yeah, don't be afraid to make mistakes. We all do it. And luckily, the ingenuity of your number of players that are underneath you are probably going to get them through it, because there's a lot of A lot of tools they leverage, and they surprise you.
Okay.
I realized I made a mistake. I realized I made a huge mistake, and those guys dug themselves out of it,
Hmm.
like
Definitely.
I never would have anticipated.
Scary Pops had one more good question. Do you guys want to take it or we'll leave it for next time?
No, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So his
I'm
question.
struggling a little bit. I'll probably bow out here so I can get some
Okay.
rest before work in the morning.
Yeah,
But
you're good. I also
uh,
need to get some sleep too. But uh,
mhm.
Scary Pops, we'll cover your question during our next discussion, or we can always talk about it in the Discord.
He's a
All
DM. He can
guys,
be here.
yeah. Guys, if you guys don't know, you can join our
Yeah.
Discord. We can have discussions there with you guys at any point. Everyone's here. We're gonna call it a night because
Channel's open.
I also, yeah, channel's always open, and I have I literally have my notifications turned on for one Discord channel, and it's this one. So when you guys post in there, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna see it. I know both of these guys are in the Discord too, and don't think they'd have any
Yep.
problem answering any questions you guys have.
Nope.
Uh,
I'm full of useless ideas. Feel free to probe me for them.
I'd be happy to give it, but I do charge.
oh,
It's a
Oh,
nominal
okay.
fee, but it's
Okay.
easy to take care of.
So-
Understandable.
So guys, thanks for joining us on our first DM's halftime report.
Mm.
Fun night, fun discussion. We stayed on topic as best we could, but as I said, it's hard. It's hard when you're passionate about stuff. You go off on some tangents when you're really having some fun and you're talking. Hex, thanks for joining us tonight. Aiden, thanks for joining me as always. Cyboxic,
happy to
thanks for
do
joining
it.
me as always. I look forward to having you guys both back for our next discussion. And guys, let us know in Discord or on Twitter or wherever you want to. Tell us what you want to see for our next discussion, and I'll bring it to these guys and be like, this is what people want, and this is what we're going to talk about. And
Or
then
if you're a DM, speak up
yeah,
and you can be on here.
yeah, I have no
100%
problem. I have no problem. There was actually supposed to be 4 of us tonight. I invited another DM to join, in which he was not able to attend, so that was unfortunate. Which we'll have him next time. He told me he's very eager and very interested in joining for these discussions. So look forward to seeing you guys all next time. Have a good night.
Have a good night, guys.
Thanks so much.